Which brings us now to the general debate on technology in public services. I call the Minister to move. Peter Kyle.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's the first time I've had the privilege of speaking under your chairmanship, and I'm very grateful for it. I beg to move that this House has considered technology in public services, and can I start by welcoming the Honourable Member for Arundel and South Downs to his place, a job that I had myself, and realise just what a privilege it is. Today I think we have 9 members seeking to catch your eye, Madam Deputy Speaker, to do their maiden speeches. Can I in advance offer them at this nervous moment my very best wishes? I look forward to hearing it, and as somebody who's about to perform their maiden speech as a Secretary of State, we are all in it together. Madam Deputy Speaker, my mum was scanned 3 times because of chest pain. 3 times in 18 months. Each time the scan came back clear. Not one of them detected the disease, lung cancer, that without warning would take her away from my family. Today, it takes an AI-powered scanner in Huddersfield Hospital just 7 seconds to detect the earliest signs of lung cancer. 7 seconds is all it takes to give somebody back decades with the people that they love. I firmly believe that, had my mother received that kind of care, she would still be alive today and would have celebrated her 80th birthday just this weekend gone. It is that belief in the power of technology to change our lives for the better that will guide this government's approach. It is all too easy to think of technology as such as AI as being impersonal, alienating or distant. But the first thing I think about is people, about the teachers in our schools who will deliver a personalised lesson to every pupil and help them fulfil their potential, about patients in our hospitals who can access life-saving drugs for diseases that until recently were untreatable. Technologies can change our everyday lives in ways that are both ordinary and extraordinary.
Will you give way on that point?
Of course I'll give way on that point.
I'm grateful to the Secretary of State. Your fine maiden speech from the start in front of the dispatch box. As a previous practicing doctor, one of the things that could really help is some of the AI that we see coming forward in terms of the back office side. Now, the previous government committed to a £3.4 billion NHS productivity plan. Is the government still committed towards taking that forward? Because that would have significant benefits for the staff and then patients following that investment.
For his intervention, and I welcome him to his place too. This government takes extremely seriously the role that AI and digital technologies has in productivity in all public services, and I hope as he hears my speech unfold he'll hear more detail about the scale of our ambition to do so. But just take one of the schemes that we will be unfolding, the Fit for the Future programme, £480 million committed to in our manifesto, that will be responsible for driving innovation through the NHS and adoption of the very latest scanning equipment, but also other equipment right across the NHS in England. So these are just some of the things that we are committed to, and I can assure him that this is an agenda that this government is wholly committed to. But nothing about change is inevitable. The future of technology is ours to shape. The opportunities it offers are ours to seize. My ministerial team and I want to see a future where technology enriches the life of every single citizen. A future with safety at its foundation. Because it is only when people are safe and feel safe that they can embrace the technology and the possibilities that it presents. Today, Britain's tech sector is showing us what that future might look like. But far too often, our public services are just simply stuck in the past. The contrast could not be clearer. Much of the century so far has been defined by the sheer speed of technological advancement. The digital revolution has transformed our lives in ways that would have been unimaginable just a couple of decades ago. Most of us can access our bank accounts anywhere at any time. Transferring money just takes seconds. Social media and video calls have given grandparents back precious time with their grandchildren, no matter how far away they may live. Young people live in a world where they can find thousands of jobs at the click of a mouse and work for a global brand without needing to leave the community they love living in. And yet, as innovation has accelerated, the state has fallen further behind. Our citizens still need to contend with up to 190 different accounts to access government services online. 190 accounts with 44 different sign-in methods, each one of them easy to lose or forget. It would be a pleasure to.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Oh, sorry, Madam Deputy Speaker. I do apologise. Related to that point is cybersecurity, and this is obviously a positive debate for us to be having. There are so many benefits for us all to have. I couldn't remember 191 passcodes, so I struggle to remember my own logging in Parliament every day. But we have to underpin everything that we're talking about in terms of technology with cybersecurity, of course. And in Cheltenham, we have a 4,900 member strong community in Sinam. They're speaking for our industry, and of course we have GCHQ as well, where thousands of people work every day. They don't ask for our thanks, but they deserve it in bucket loads. The Secretary of State may be aware, I sent him a letter recently to talk about the Golden Valley development in Cheltenham, which will include the National Cyber Innovation Centre, and I wonder whether he might like to find out more about that by sending members of his team or himself to have a chat with me about it.
Thank you. I'm very grateful. I know, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the honourable gentleman, who I welcome to his place, did spend quite a bit of time on his intervention, but I realise in his constituency there is just simply so much to talk about. I pay tribute to the organisations he referenced, including GCHQ and SINAP. The work they do is often unthanked, but is absolutely essential to the security, well-being and economic welfare of our country. I certainly intend to visit as soon as I can, and it would be great to meet up with any of his representatives at any point in time. I'm sure my ministerial team would be willing to do so as well. Every one of those login, of course I'll give way to the honourable gentleman.
First of all, thank the Minister for coming forward. Minister, one of the things that comes up all the time in my constituency is with those people who are elderly, pensioners, who have great difficulties with online commitment. They don't understand it, not because they're silly or anything, just because it's too technical for them. So would the Minister be able to assure me that when it comes to the looking and ensuring that pensioners are looked after, that there will be nothing that will disadvantage them in any way to getting their monies? Thank you.
I'm grateful for his intervention, the first on me in this Parliament, and I doubt it will be the last. But I'm grateful for it. I'm going to come to digital exclusion a bit later in the speech, and I hope that answers his question. If not, I'm very happy to return to it. And on the issue of cybersecurity, I'll be returning to as well. But I do hope the honourable gentleman from Cheltenham does learn his parliamentary sign-in code as quickly as possible. I think that would be a good start to a secure and safe parliamentary career. Because I do realise that every one of these login details is easy to forget. Engaging with the state has become a bureaucratic burden on working people, a burden that they can scarcely afford. Unbelievably, UK adults spend 3 billion hours each year dealing with government-related admin. I'll give way in just 1 second. For the average citizen, that is 1.5 working weeks every single year. It's less time to spend with their kids when they get home after a long day's work, less time to get outside or see the friends to stay healthy and be happy. Put simply, it is less time to do the things that they like and be with the people that they love. I give way to the honourable lady.
I'm very grateful to my right honourable friend, and can I just commend him on his excellent speech that he's making at the first time from the dispatch box, and the very moving way that he said it, and my condolences about his mum as well. My right honourable friend will be aware that during the pandemic, the inequity was exposed around the use of oximeters, the little gadgets that they use to look at the oxygen in your blood, and the racial bias that was exposed during that, and the evidence review that was commissioned by the former Health Secretary, revealed that this is quite widespread. It also revealed that algorithms used in artificial intelligence, for example in social security, also have the potential of an inequity as well. How will we ensure that all the benefits that Right Honourable Friend is correctly saying that there are, how will we make sure that there is also the protection around equity?
I'm extremely grateful for my honourable friend's intervention. She makes an incredibly important point, and I hope that she sees that one of the themes of the speech that I'm making is indeed tackling inequality, inequity, but also outlining the fact that I believe this issue is one of the progressive causes of our time. Because if we're not careful and we don't shape this agenda in the right way, with progressive values baked in and safety baked in from the start of everything we do on this agenda, we firstly won't have the trust of the public, but also every citizen will not benefit in the way that they should. These are issues when it comes to the life sciences aspects of this agenda that she references. The Health Secretary and myself are joined at the hip on this issue. We co-developed the Life Sciences Action Plan, which we are currently jointly rolling out together. He and I both chair some of the work relating to the Life Sciences Action Plan, and we will make sure, the two of us, working for a government and a Prime Minister that cares so much about the inequities that currently exist in society and tackling them, that these issues will be central to the agenda as it unfolds. Every day, people in Britain are confronted with a glaring technology gap between the private sector and public services, a gap that has become just impossible to ignore, between the personalised and paper shuffling, the efficient and the inconvenient, the time-saving and the time-wasting. The gap isn't just a policy problem to solve, it is one of the great progressive causes of our time. The previous government promised us a small state, but after 14 years, all they did was give us a slow one. A state that takes away time from those with too few hours to give. The parents on low income who are already missing out on their time with their families because they're working overtime just to make ends meet. The people at the margins of our digital world or excluded from it altogether. By closing the technology gap, we will restore every citizen's belief that the state can work for them. When the previous government set up DSIT, they recognised the transformative power of technology. They were right to do so. But if we want to lay the foundations for a decade of national renewal, then we must be much bolder. We need to rewire Whitehall, because technology is much more than just another sector to support or a strategic advantage to secure. It is the foundation for every one of our national missions. From kickstarting economic growth and making Britain a clean energy superpower, to breaking down barriers to opportunity and building an NHS that is fit for the future. Our task, then, is fundamentally different, and our approach must be too. That is why we have made DSIT the digital centre for government. By bringing together digital data and technology experts from across government under one roof, my department will drive forward the transformation of the state. That transformation won't just save people time, it will save taxpayers money too. This government is under no illusions about the scale of the challenge that we face. I would happily give way.
Could you just explain what that means in reality then for the Cabinet Office and the role that DSIT now has in terms of who has the organisation and control over what goes on in Whitehall and his department?
I'm very grateful for the question. The delivery functions of digital transformation have moved from the Cabinet Office and other departments into DSIT. Governance of such services remains shared between us, including a powerful role for the Treasury oversight as well. We want to harness the best of government, and we must do so by working together collaboratively. That is the missions-led approach that the Prime Minister has championed, and that is a belief I have absolutely baked through DSIT and the way that we work. I recognise that the challenges that we are seeking to solve with a powerful digital centre of government can only work if we work and provide a resource that other governments aspire to draw down on and work collaboratively too. That is the target we've set ourselves and we're setting about trying to achieve. But as I said, the government is under no illusions about the scale of the challenge that we face. We promise to mend Britain's broken public services, Now we must do so with the worst set of economic circumstances since the Second World War. With taxes at a 70-year high and £22 billion black hole in public finances, we cannot afford to duck the difficult decisions. The solution is not unchecked spending. It is long-term, sustainable economic growth delivered in strategic partnership with business.
Would my right honourable friend give way?
Of course, I'll give way.
I thank my right honourable friend for giving way in the excellent speech he is making. And women businesses could add £200 billion to the economy if they were invested in at the same rate as men in business. The female founders community is in uproar since it was announced that Innovate UK was only going to award half of the 75k grants in its Women in Innovation Fund, even though almost 1,500 women applied for it. Innovate UK has since reversed that decision, but would the Secretary of State meet with the community to understand their experiences, find out what went wrong, and ensure that Innovate UK better supports the government's growth mission by better supporting female founders?
I'm extremely grateful for that intervention by my honourable friend. She makes an incredibly important point. Firstly, on the broad themes of underrepresented communities in the tech sector. This is multifaceted. This is not just about some people being excluded from the products that are emerging from the tech sector. It's also about access to the great jobs that are being created in the tech sector itself. It is clear that there is regional imbalance in this, there is socioeconomic imbalance in this, and there are other equality issues as well. Look, I remember very well in the 1990s trying to get into university and being very well, a system back then diverting people like me away from it. I had to apply 4 times and go back to secondary school at the age of 25 to get into university. And now I see a tech sector that's not dissimilar in the way that sometimes it diverts people away from it from certain backgrounds or fails to attract those people with great potential into the sector itself. We need to do better than that. So we need to lead from government. So when I saw Innovate UK's decision, I was unsettled by it, but very pleased they came out so rapidly, not only reversing the decision and going back to the full 50 grants, but also issuing a forthright apology for the mistake that led to that problem happening in the first place. These issues shouldn't emerge. I know that Innovate UK will learn those lessons, but we need to make sure that government is at the forefront of delivering not just support for the sector, creating the jobs and technology of the future, but making sure that it does so in a way which is equitable. So I'm very grateful for her giving me the opportunity to put that on the record. And yes, of course, I look forward to meeting with the community that she mentioned. An emissions-led approach to reforming our public services will harness the power of technology to make them more productive. Take artificial intelligence. It's not just doctors and teachers who are using AI to change the lives of the public that they serve. In Greater Manchester, citizens' advice centres are using Caddy, an AI-powered co-pilot tool developed with my officials to help staff and volunteers provide more helpful advice to the people that need it. And digital experts in my department are thinking about how we can use AI to connect clean energy projects to the grid more quickly. Stories like these are just the starting point, but they remain all too rare. Why should any citizen be denied cutting-edge healthcare, clean energy, or a world-class education? Why should a vulnerable person struggling with eviction or debt struggle to get the help that they need? Adopting AI across health, education, and policing could boost the productivity by almost £20 billion a year, £24 billion a year. If we fail to do so, the benefits of AI could become the preserve of the privileged few. The urgency of our task demands decisive action, because people shouldn't have to wait for better public services. They rightly expect that we will fix the public finances fast. That is why we will publish the AI Action Plan led by Matt Clifford. The Action Plan will work out how we can make the very best use of AI to grow the economy and deliver the government's national missions. Then we will set up the AI Opportunities Unit to help make the Action Plan's recommendations a reality. My department will transform public services for the people who use them by working with departments across Whitehall to pioneer safe, new and innovative applications for AI. Every one of those applications will depend on 2 things: digital infrastructure and data. These will be the driving force behind Britain's digital transformation, behind better hospitals and schools, behind safer streets, behind transport that works for working people. It'd be a pleasure to give way to the honourable gentleman.
The Secretary of State to his position. And what he's talking about, transforming public sector, I think, across the House, I think we can all get on board with. I just wonder if in any of the negotiations, pay negotiations, either happened or which are going to happen in the future across Whitehall, the acceptance of technology coming into the public sector will be part of those as part of a quid pro quo for the future.
I think the honourable gentleman pits productivity enhancing tools against the interests of workers. I don't believe it is the case. I believe that not only, if you take the example I gave earlier on in Huddersfield Hospital, somewhere I had the pleasure of visiting, you'll see that people have been retrained because AI is very good at giving all clears, the 20% of people who have given all clears. So therefore the radiologists have been back and be retrained, come back on a higher pay scale for doing so, but productivity has gone from 700 scans a week to 1,000 scans a week. So therefore, not only is cost neutral for the department, it's cost beneficial for the department. So I believe that these are the kinds of productivity gains that actually enhance work and the satisfaction that workers take in the workplace. Now, we're the government. We do have some agency in how this technology is used, it's rolled out, and it supports people in the workplace. We will make sure that we deliver value for money for the taxpayer, that we deliver services that are cost effective for the taxpayer, but we will do so in a way that also we will aspire to make sure that workers' rights and satisfaction in the workplace increases. We are a government that respects the work of the civil service, the value that the civil service provides our country, and we want to make sure that these tools sit alongside that ambition that delivers greater outcomes for the country, whilst making sure that the civil servants who are working so hard for our country take a bit more, perhaps, pleasure from their work as well, by being assisted by some of this technology that we will be introducing to the work that government does. Because it would be a pleasure, but I have to say to the House, I don't want to cut into any of the time of the maiden speeches that are coming up, so I won't take too many more interventions after this.
I thank the Minister again for giving way. I'm looking very much forward to the rest of his contribution. Minister, technology sometimes, I'm talking to a person who doesn't have much grasp of technology, but I understand that many people have a fear. The fear is the Post Office Horizon scandal, an example of whenever the system was saying no, actually it was saying yes. A real problem. Whenever it comes to people travelling with British Airways, the system just conked out for 24 hours. Those are examples where things go wrong. What can the Minister do to ensure and give us confidence that the system will actually work?
I'm grateful for his intervention. As I'll say in a moment, all of this is contingent on one key principle, and that is building trust with the public. We need to do so through actions, not just words, but we have to take the public with us at every step of the way. Otherwise, we won't have the permission to deliver the transformation that ultimately will be profoundly beneficial for them. I've striven throughout this speech, and since I've had the pleasure of having this role in opposition and in government, of course I'll give way on that point.
I thank the Minister. He's been very generous with his time. Just on that point in regards to the public being confident in any systems that we roll out, will the Minister also agree with me that we need to ensure that we have guardrails set in place so that organisations and companies know what their responsibilities are?
Yeah, I'm grateful. The interventions are sort of building up, and I think I can do sort of both together to satisfy both. But yes, look, safety has to be built in at the outset, and the public need to see that. You know, we've inherited a problem with safety in our country. Women and girls don't feel safe outside after dark. Parents don't think their children are safe online. You know, we have an issue with safety that we need to get a grip on. And in my brief here at DCIT, myself and my ministers and the department feel incredibly strongly that we need to reassure people that as we embrace the technological advances that sit before us, that we do so in a way that has safety built in from the outset, and that is something that we will do. We have high expectations that others will do so too, and as I will mention in a moment, we are setting statutory obligations on those people at the pioneering side of of AI. I'm not going to give away a third time, I'm afraid, because others do have to get in, because otherwise I will get a glaring look from the Deputy Speaker, and if you've not had one of those yet, when you do, you'll understand why I'm moving forward at pace. Because to build a smarter state, we need to build a state with digital infrastructure that is faster than ever. From the data centres powering cutting-edge AI to the broadband connections creating opportunities for all of our communities. We must also manage public sector data as a national strategic resource. For far too long, public sector data has been undervalued and underused. We must replace chaos with coordination, confusion with coherence. That is why the National Data Library, that is what the National Data Library will do. With a coherent data access policy and a library and exchange service, it will transform the way we manage our public sector data. And it will have a relentless focus on maximising the value of that data for public good, on growing the economy and creating new jobs, on delivering the data-driven, AI-powered public services that they deserve. The digital revolution promises to overhaul the way that citizens engage with the state. But like every technological revolution before it, we know that it brings risks. And with those risks comes uncertainty, instability, and for some, fear. We do not believe that people should have to choose between those two competing visions of our future, between safety and prosperity, security and opportunity. By shaping technology in the service of people, we will grow the economy, we will create jobs, and we will lay the foundations for an inclusive society in which every citizen can see a place for themselves.
On that point, would you go away?
I will happily go away.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend, the Secretary of State, is making a fine speech, but I just wonder if he could say a little bit about the cross-government conversations that should be happening about upskilling and the opportunities for workers, because what is cutting-edge technology today can be obsolete in 6 to 12 months' time. So is there a plan for a rolling programme of training and upskilling so that workers who work with technology can keep pace with it as it develops over time?
I'm extremely grateful to the honourable member. It is so fantastic to see him back in his seat, and then to do so, we see no better reason as to why when he makes incisive contributions to debates of that nature. So I'm in very close touch with the Education Secretary. My department is in very close touch with the Education Department over the skills agenda, because we can only seize these opportunities and make sure these opportunities are available to everybody from every background if we get skills right. At the moment, we are not, but there are some pioneering projects that I've visited. We want to make sure that these are accessible to everybody who needs it, but I can assure him this is something that is central to the conversations that we are having going forward. But even as we seize every opportunity to build a better future, we will responsibly manage the threats that new technologies pose to our security. Because the first duty of any government is to keep our nation safe. Thanks to years of neglect, Britain has been left catastrophically exposed to cyber attacks with disastrous consequences for public services and for working people alike. Over 10,000 outpatient appointments were postponed following this year's attack on the NHS in London. 10,000 appointments, 10,000 people forced to wait to access the care that they needed. If we do not act, we know that there will be more attacks to come, more hours lost in our hospitals and our schools. The Prime Minister has been clear that in an ever more volatile world, we will do what is necessary to defend our country from those who seek to do us harm. That is why we are introducing the Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill, which will shore up our cyber defences and protect our public services in the decades to come. I would happily give way to him.
Madam Deputy Speaker, supercomputing and artificial intelligence are key drivers for making us more cyber resilient. Would the Secretary of State please give clarification on why 1.3 billion has been cut from that budget?
I'm grateful for his intervention. Again, I welcome him to his place, and it's good to see him participating in these debates. And it gives me the opportunity to say in response to his question, which asks why I cut something. Can I just point out to the honourable gentleman, you can't cut something that didn't exist in the first place. We have a former Prime Minister who announced a scheme and yet allocated not a single penny towards it. We have a Chancellor of the Exchequer who, at this dispatch box in his last budget, announced a scheme but didn't go back to his department or allocate a single penny towards it. I did not cut anything because nothing existed in the first place. Words matter when you're in government, and they must be followed through with action. And I'm afraid to the government that for which preceded us, it was all words and it was no action. And it's why we'll be bringing forward binding regulations on the handful of companies who are developing the most powerful AI systems of tomorrow. The principle behind both pieces of legislation is simple: trust. And we will rebuild Britain's public services. Public trust in technology will be our cornerstone. To earn that trust, we will always put people's safety first. But we must also show that technology can be a force for good. And that is what we will do, because every person who receives the kind of scan my mother didn't, every family with years longer together, every child with an education that gives them the opportunities their parents never had, every one of these people is a testament to the power of technology to change their lives for the better. And yet, for each of those people, there are so many more who are missing out on an education that could change their life, on the scan that could save it. By closing the technology gap, this government will ensure that every person benefits from the digital public services that they deserve, and we will give Britain's future back. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
The question is that this House has considered technology in public services, and I call Opposition spokesperson Andrew Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and may I, on behalf of these benches, welcome you to your place. I'd also like to take this opportunity to welcome the Secretary of State and his ministers, congratulate him on a maiden speech that had much in it to commend, and congratulate him on his stewardship of what is a fantastic department. He's fortunate to be supported by a team, I know from my experience, of outstanding officials, and I pay tribute to their deep knowledge and dedication. Madam Deputy Speaker, our constituents know that innovation and technology is our future. His department was already at the heart of our mission, supported by a record 29% increase in investment from 2023 to 25 to grow the economy and cement Britain's science and technology superpower status. My colleague, the former member for Chippenham, and I and my colleague for Meriden left the department in good shape, with at that time an expected underspend to this year's budget. It may well be that we were better at fending off the Chancellor than he has been. I note the changes to the machinery of government, which sees government digital services and the incubator for AI and other functions move from the Cabinet Office to his department. Whether or not that's a good idea, time will tell. But what is clear is it makes it even more important that he and his team now deliver. And where they do so seriously, they will have our support. We couldn't open this term of Parliament on a more important subject. Productivity drains in the public sector take money directly out of taxpayers' pockets. It's not fair on hard-working families. We know that the public sector accounts for roughly 20% of our national output, and it's often a source of national pride. Yet the hard truth is that public service productivity is far lower than that in the private sector. As the Right Honourable Gentleman talked about, few departments are without opportunities to deliver public services better and at lower cost to the taxpayer. We can together transform NHS productivity, make use of advanced technology and sensors to better secure our borders or defend our country, even from new domains like space. Introduce driverless trains to stop trade unions holding passengers to ransom. Support farmers and food producers wishing to wean themselves off migrant labour through agri-tech and robotics. Implement better use of tagging, smart prisons and improved case flow in the criminal justice system. And a great deal more. There are many brilliant officials across the civil service who are helping to foster this tech revolution. But I'm afraid their morale is being undermined by this government's early approach to appointments. And it's on their behalf that I asked the Secretary of State, what was it, Secretary of State, about the £66,000 donation Labour supporting Emily Middleton that first attracted you to make her one of the senior civil servants in your department? For the truth, Madam Deputy Speaker, is there are real questions to answer. What exercise did the Secretary of State go through between announcing the new department on Monday and appointing a new Director General later the very same week to satisfy himself that not one single civil servant across government was fit to do that role? Did he disclose the £66,000 donation to the Permanent Secretary on his appointment? Did he tell the Civil Service Commission about the £66,000 donation and the links to Labour? Was it him or someone in his office who told Emily Middleton to delete her LinkedIn account? And why, given the ministerial code is clear on the duty of ministers to ensure that no conflict arise or could reasonably be perceived to arise, did he not recuse himself from all decisions and discussions on this matter? And Madam Deputy Speaker, Parliament, if the Secretary of State will not use this opportunity to come clean, answer all of these questions and to publish the relevant correspondence, I really think it's time for Sir Laurie Magnus, the independent adviser on ministerial interests, to now investigate. Madam Deputy Speaker, my colleagues on this benches, I'll happily give way.
I think it's an important point he raises on this specific issue, because this isn't a junior appointment or a private office appointment or an advice appointment. This is a Director General appointment, the second most senior level of the civil service. I'm not aware, and I just wonder if the honourable member is, of any time when such an appointment has been made in such a way in the past.
Well, my honourable friend makes an important point, and he's quite right that this is a Director General level appointment of the civil service, second only to the Permanent Secretary, one of, I believe, only 3 Director General level appointments in the entirety of his department. Somebody with the power to hire and fire and advance and promote civil servants, and somebody, once, this is an important point, because once this Rubicon has been crossed, once the civil service has political...
Order. Can people keep their remarks to the chamber and not to exchanges across the benches? Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I will make some progress. I understand that colleagues will want to move on to other points, but it is a very important point. Once this Rubicon has been crossed, it will not be possible to unbake that cake of an independent civil service. And imagine the civil servants, the ambitious civil servants, the directors, the Director Generals, who never even had the chance to be considered for this role. I will give way.
As interested as I am in this point of process and discussions about cronyism, I turned up to hear a debate about technology and public services, and I was wondering if he had any opinions on that subject.
Well, but I hope perhaps that he'll have a chance to speak on exactly that subject later on. But it's absolutely critical, and I think a point of commonality across this House, that we can only deliver change through professional and competent civil servants, and it is important that the morale of his department, as with every other Whitehall department, is maintained. Now, I've finished making my points on this. I'm happy to move on in the interests of the debate.
If the honourable gentleman would care, if he talks about the morale of the civil service, how he thinks that was affected by the Prime Minister referring to them as the blob, how Cabinet Ministers walking around their offices leaving little notes, being passive-aggressive about where are you, how that affected morale, because it's very easy to make the snide comments that he's doing, but it's not really relevant, is it?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I accept we've strayed some way from the important topic that the Secretary of State came to talk about tonight. So much as though I'd greatly enjoy continuing with the honourable member, I'm happy to move on and address some other points that the Secretary of State raised. It was the last government who launched a wide-ranging public service productivity review to address these issues and understand for the first time how technology can transform our economy. It was, as my honourable friend for Hinckley and Bosworth raised, the last government who decided to harness the potential of AI in healthcare with the NHS AI Lab and a £3.4 billion investment fund to cut admin and fast-track diagnosis. I wasn't 100% clear. I don't want to willfully interpret what the Secretary of State says, but I hope that that fund continues and that we can continue to see that opportunity. And the public have directly benefited from the sort of vast improvements that the Secretary of State talked about, thanks to government's embrace of technology. It now takes less than 3 weeks to receive a new passport, often very much less, thanks to the adoption of cloud-based working practices. As of March of this year, 99% of passport applications were processed within the target timeframe, a performance that, sad to say, I don't think many other parts of government achieve. Some will have concerns about what the implementation of new technologies in the public sector will mean for those who work in it. As he well knows, if we're honest, the business case for many new technologies has an impact on workers. The Secretary of State must filter out naysayers, even they happen to be his party's union paymasters. Whatever those paymasters say, disruptive technology is good for the public and vital to economic growth. I'll happily give way.
Gentleman claims to support UK technology and science, but he is on the record opposing solar and wind farms. Is he actually really a shadow anti-science secretary?
I'd be very happy if I'm very conscious. No, I could not be happier. I could not be happier to debate that topic. I am very conscious of the number of members I was told who are trying to make their maiden speeches. And I think it's right, Madam Deputy Speaker, that every intervention we take now potentially jeopardises the chance of members to make those maiden speeches. In short, there is a very fine place for solar. It's on the roofs of warehouses, car parks, supermarkets, new homes where appropriate, and it is not on productive farmland. Now, in government, we significantly increased spending on public sector research by 29% to £20 billion in the year the current financial year. Our recent manifesto pledged to increase that by a further 10% over the life of this Parliament. And can I ask the Secretary of State or the Minister in winding up if they can pledge to match that ambition to a sector that is desperate to see that certainty of funding? Secretary of State has my sympathy. I cannot imagine how difficult his phone call with Edinburgh University, who had already invested £30 million in the exascale facility supercomputer, must have been. This was a national facility that would have enabled significant advances in artificial intelligence, medical research, climate science and clean energy innovation. This investment was fully costed, amounted over many years to what the NHS burns through in 3 days. There seems to be confusion at the Treasury. Just because semiconductors are becoming smaller in size, that does not mean the Secretary of State's department must follow suit. I'll happily give way.
The Shadow Secretary of State said that the exascale project was fully costed. Could he confirm that it was fully funded too?
Yes, the exascale investment, which was being delivered through UKRI, an enterprise that has approaching £9 billion every single year, and would, under our manifesto, have had a growing level of investment across the entirety of the spending review. There were plans in place to deliver, and that is why Edinburgh University were so confident that that would be delivered, because it was a clear priority in our spending plans, a clear priority communicated in writing by his predecessor, the Secretary of State, in writing to the Chief Executive of UKRI, notwithstanding the fact that the Treasury seems to have got his tongue, that immediately upon taking office, a project that, let's just say, the Treasury never loved, seems to have mysteriously been cancelled. But that was a project that was being delivered by UKRI, an organisation with very significant resources financially that far exceeded the 1.3 billion cost of the supercomputer. It's the wrong decision at the wrong time.
Thank the Shadow Minister for giving way. I just wonder how you feel about the Rosalind Franklin Laboratory in Leamington Spa that received over £1 billion in government funding, and the last government put it on Rightmove.
The government didn't do that. It's an independent, I mean, you can't have it both ways. It's an independent institute that had multiple different sources of funding, and funding of that nature, as the Secretary of State and his ministers will discover, is competitive funding that is allotted by independent research councils. It wouldn't have been within the gift of I or any other minister to abrogate that competitive funding process, and inevitably as part of that, there are projects that are funded and projects that are not funded. But in terms of the exascale computer, that was a very clear priority. It sat within the overall financial resources of UKRI, and under our government, that was an expanding level of resource, and people should have absolute confidence that that programme would have continued, would have been delivered in the context of the much larger amount of money that's spent through the department, but by government as a whole. That was a good decision. It would have had huge benefits to the UK. The Chief Executive of the UKRI has talked at length about what that would have benefited, and I think it's the wrong decision. And I urge the Secretary of State to go back, perhaps rejoin, lock horns with the Treasury, and seek to continue that project before it is too late, before contracts are cancelled, before technology is not procured.
The Honourable Gentleman has said quite clearly that it was announced in the budget, but it was contingent on a manifesto that hadn't even been written at the time of the budget in order to deliver the money promised in a budget. Now, he is an accountant by trade. Could he just explain to the House why a Chancellor of the Exchequer standing up and making a commitment for which he has not one penny allocated until winning potentially a general election that hasn't been called is irresponsible?
The Secretary of State will well understand that a department at any point in time goes through a triennial spending review. Actually, the triennial spending review hadn't fully happened, but a government also makes forward-looking commitments, declarations of intent, and commissions work, whether it's an arm's-length body like UKRI, whether it's commissioning officials in the department to deliver its priorities. Now, this was a very clear, I don't think the Secretary of State is disputing the fact that this was a clear priority. And if you look at the aggregate of amount of spend, the aggregated amount of spend that flows through UKRI and the different funding councils, including STFC, that was going to deliver the supercomputer project, there's no question that that would have been delivered. It wasn't contingent on growth. It was contingent on the fact that merely a government of any persuasion, advised by its independent civil servants, delivery to take place within organisations like UKRI would have delivered that programme. Now, that is why Edinburgh University was so committed to it. It had been announced by the previous government. Equipment was being procured, and it's really, really important that as we seek to compete with modern states that are busily investing in exactly this sort of facility, that it's wrong that we should simply try and recoil from that. It's not something that the Treasury ever loved. It's, you have to push hard as the Secretary of State in this department, as we did. But it's wrong to allow that brilliant project that's going to unlock so many of the benefits that the Secretary of State talked about this evening, and see that step back. So again, I ask him, please use every opportunity, lock horns with the Treasury, see what can be done to revisit that decision. It's a very, very important project, and it's part of an ambition which I think we both share about the future of this country. Madam Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, the first duty of government should do no harm. We cannot afford to get this agenda wrong. We will judge this government by our actions. Where they are bold in delivering better outcomes at lower cost to the taxpayer, they can count on our full support. We will help this progressive Secretary of State face down the Union Luddites in his own party. On these benches, we will support efforts to place the private sector at the heart of our agenda to reform the NHS. But the people of the UK cannot afford half-hearted efforts. The Treasury curtailing the departmental budget to meet public sector pay rises elsewhere, or the abandonment of real ambition that can unlock the potential of technology to benefit this country for years to come.
I call Onwurah.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it is a real pleasure to speak in this debate on technology and in the public services. Now, I know that many new members are waiting to give their maiden speeches, so I shall try to be brief on this, a subject which is very dear to my heart and which I'm very passionate about. And indeed, in Labour government, which finally gets the importance of technology and its potential to transform our lives. In a speech just last week, the Prime Minister promised to harness the full potential of AI for the public good. And as the Secretary of State laid out, we are already making progress. A few days ago, government released a bank of example lessons, plans and curriculum to help train generative AI tools, not to undermine teachers or try and replace them with large language models, but to free them up to spend more time teaching the next generation. Only 2 months in, that is not bad. And it's really important that we have good news stories to tell about technology in public services. Indeed, I want to start by praising technology. Generally, I consider myself a tech evangelist, and I know that many of the new intake do also. And we cannot count how many lives have been saved by remote medicine, how many businesses have been started, enabled, or grown through technology, how many marriages have been saved by not arguing about how to get directions, how much joy has been shared through cat memes. Technology can and should be a force for good. That is why I went into engineering, to make the world work better for everyone. And the opportunity technology offers public services, as the Secretary of State laid out, is huge. In opposition, I shadowed digital technology and science briefs. Now, given the dire mess that 14 years of Tory government have made of our country and our finances, praise for anything that happened under their multiple and ever-changing regimes is rare. But I want to give credit where credit is due. The creation of government digital services back in 2011 was world-leading. It was a Labour idea, but anyway, it delivered real benefits to both the public and the civil service. From online tax returns to driving licences, the GDS model of user-centred, agile service development reaped some big wins, which saved the government money and saved people time. And the report I commissioned in 2014, Technology for Everyone, the Prize of Digital Government, highlighted the opportunities, as did Our Digital Future, another report in 2020. But the Conservative government didn't follow through, didn't succeed in driving change through every Whitehall department or outside Whitehall into local government, and so squandered the promise of GDS. Digital government lost its way between departmental silos, conservative factionalism, lack of investment, and a focus on woke lanyards rather than technology adoption. So we've not made the progress we should. My constituents spend too much time trying to interact with public services in ways which are repetitive, time-consuming or plain hostile. And I've had constituents in tears in my surgeries because they can't make a benefits claim or they're on hold for some service for hours on end. Good news. Very briefly, as so many people are...
Well, the only thing I want to say to the Honourable Lady is I think that obviously technology is the subject of this discussion today, but there's also an issue of connectivity to that technology. And so in some parts of the country, isn't it also the case that actually that connectivity, even rather than even dealing with the technology itself, could also be a major issue?
Gentleman for that intervention in highlighting the lack of progress, indeed the failure of the last Conservative government to roll out acceptable digital infrastructure across our country. And it's true also that good news stories about technology have been replaced by tech horror stories, workers imprisoned unfairly because of software failures, and at the post office, students treated unfairly in exam algorithms. This entrenches opposition to technology, and too many of my constituents feel they are being tracked, monitored, surveilled and analysed. They don't want to go online without feeling safe and secure. As work by the Collective Intelligence Project highlights, safety, participation and progress must go hand in hand, because only public confidence in AI will enable us to drive adoption in public services and improve productivity. So that's why the government is so right to emphasise safe deployment. Pre-deployment evaluations of foundation models by our world-leading AI Safety Institute will boost public confidence. Transparency regarding when AI is used in the public sector and how will help maintain trust. Now, having worked in technology deployment for many years, bitter experience has led me to the conclusion that whatever the problem, technology is not the answer on its own. You cannot force technology on people. Co-creation is an overused term, but an underused reality. So engagement and participation, partnership working need to be part of the plans for adoption. The group Connected by Data has great examples of this type of participatory decision-making, and Camden Council, until recently led by the Honourable Member for Queen's Park and Maida Vale, has done excellent work in this regard. And I'm also sure I don't need to tell the House that AI is the subject of hype as well as hope. In partnership with the existing What Works centres, we need to try and evaluate different uses of AI in our hospitals, schools, etc., so that we can scale up the most cost-effective solutions while avoiding expensive failures. The private sector has driven the adoption of so many of the technologies which have transformed our lives, but we must build state capacity in tech so government can innovate, recruiting more and more diverse science and technology experts into the civil service. We need fair, open and transparent procurement processes which enable British startups as well as big tech companies to bid for government contracts. And from the government's response to my PQs, from the previous government, response to my PQs, I'm concerned that our digital infrastructure may be too dependent on single or dual suppliers or on proprietary systems. And I hope the Secretary of State will consider this and the role of startups and open source in ensuring resilience. Digital inclusion was neglected by the previous government. Age UK estimates that around a third of over 75s, that's 1.7 million people, do not use the internet. So you must tackle the barriers, which include infrastructure, availability, cost and skills gap, but we also need to recognise that some people may never be comfortable with digital access to government services. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, we should remember that we too are a public service. I have raised the adoption of technology in this place many times. Indeed, I worked closely with the House authorities during COVID to deliver a remote parliament by introducing Zoom into the Commons. We must lead by example when it comes to adopting technology to improve our performance. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm standing to be chair of the Science and Innovation and Technology Committee because it is so important to all our constituents. But they often feel that technology is something which is done to them rather than with them and for them. The benefits of technology have not been shared fairly. Under a Labour government, this will change and public services will lead the way.
I call Liberal Democrat spokesperson Layla Moran.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's a pleasure to begin this new parliamentary term debating the role of technology in public services. And I'd like to start by extending a special welcome to the friends and family in the gallery who are eagerly waiting for the many maiden speeches behind me. So I will be brief. You can start timing if you wish. Under the Conservatives, Britain's public services have steadily deteriorated with insufficient investment across the board. Schools, hospitals and prisons are literally crumbling and transport projects were axed at ministerial whim. So amid a cost of living crisis where people are looking so desperately to public services for support, tackling the big challenges in our public services is absolutely essential. Now, I am a technophile. I'm a former science teacher. I spent most of my childhood buried in science fiction, and you can draw a straight line from Star Trek to where I am standing now. Next generation, in case anyone was wondering. So today I will focus primarily on the positives, but if we want buy-in from the public, we need to show the public that this Parliament also understands and legislates for the mitigation of the risks of technology too, and I will touch on that also. Because technology has the potential to revolutionise our public services, making them more efficient, accessible and responsive to the needs of every citizen. Automating routine tasks can free up staff time to deal with more complex issues, and using digital platforms can reduce the need for physical infrastructure, which in turn lowers costs. Digital services can also help to reach those in remote areas, and real-time data or open data initiatives help to make the government processes more transparent. And there are so many examples of local councils and public services already innovating and using technology to improve services. Online GP appointments and digital prescriptions, where appropriate, can free up GP time as surgeries are under ever-growing pressure. And the Secretary of State spoke so movingly about his mother and the technology that she sadly didn't have. But he's right to point out that technology is transforming our NHS on a day-to-day basis, and we must welcome that. And online learning platforms, back to my heartland of teaching, were used incredibly successfully in the education sector, particularly during the lockdowns. And we have learnt much about what works, but also what doesn't, regarding technology in the classroom. But when public services look at introducing new innovations and technologies, there are also significant barriers. Despite recent funding increases, council budgets are expected to be 18% lower in real terms in 24-25 than in the early 2010s, with demand for acute services increasing post-pandemic. Local services are too often struggling with tight ring-fence budgets, which prevents the strategic investments needed to upgrade outdated systems and implement digital technologies. How many have spent their time in a queue waiting to talk to a local council, wondering why on earth do we still have this old technology? So digital and technology skills are often also highlighted as a big concern for local authorities, who face a growing struggle to recruit and retain skilled technologists. Public services find it hard to compete with the salaries of the private sector or to invest in training and development. Now, on artificial intelligence, which is by far and away the sexiest part of this area, one of the most significant and most talked about areas, technology is developing rapidly and we are risking falling behind. Now, if implemented properly, it can improve experiences for service users. Using chatbots and virtual assistants can help to personalise services and address queries. Automated data analysis can evaluate larger quantities of data in a shorter time frame. And where AI is used to support the creation of data sets, accurate patterns and trends in data can be drawn. In my local area of Oxfordshire, the County Council are piloting the use of generative AI to support administrative tasks. And the scheme will look at whether AI can speed up routine processes in order to reduce costs. The previous government's announcement of £110 million in funding would be ring-fenced for deployment of AI across the public sector was a welcome development, and I'd like to hear from the new Minister whether their government plans to follow through on this scheme, because I think it is well worth investing in. But AI is not without its challenges. It reflects the values and the biases of the humans who create it, causing campaigners to raise concerns. In August 2020, the Home Office agreed to stop using a computer algorithm to help sort visa applications after it was claimed it contained entrenched racism and bias. The algorithm essentially created a three-tier system for immigration, with a speedy boarding lane for white people from the most favoured countries in the system. And earlier this year, it emerged that the Department for Work and Pensions had stopped routinely suspending benefit claims flagged by its AI-powered fraud detector. Campaigners have long raised concerns that potential bias in the system could lead to unfair delays for legitimate claimants. The campaign group Big Brother Watch said DWP's over-reliance on new technologies puts the rights of people who are often already disadvantaged, marginalised and vulnerable in the backseat. It's vital that the government are open and transparent with the public about how and why AI and algorithmic models are being used. So I was pleased to see the recent comments by the department that algorithmic transparency recording standard is now mandatory for all departments, but I would argue that we need to go further. Liberal Democrats want to see a clear, workable and well-resourced cross-sectoral regulatory framework that promotes innovation while creating certainty for AI users, developers and investments. My colleague, Lord Clement Jones, has laid a private member's bill in a previous session in the other place called the Public Authority Algorithm Bill. We know how to party in the Liberal Democrats. The bill would regulate, but that is very important. The bill would regulate the use of automated decision-making in public sector and require a public authority to complete an algorithmic impact assessment where it uses an automated decision-making system. So I would urge the ministers to look at this and work with colleagues across the House in both places to develop the right regulation. And if they haven't had a chance to speak to Lord Clement Jones, a former chair of the Lords Select Committee on AI, I would encourage them to do so. So in conclusion, technology offers so many opportunities, but if we don't get to grips with the risks, we lose public support. The Liberal Democrats want to embrace these opportunities for innovation and change, and we want to also protect citizens' rights, their identities and their data. It's vital we put the right infrastructure and safeguards in place to help our public services make the most of new opportunities while keeping our country safe. And I hope the government is ready to think strategically and invest for the long term of our country, putting science and innovation at the heart of their plan for economic growth. If they do, the Liberal Democrats will support them, and where appropriate, they can expect us to challenge them too.
Patricia Ferguson to make her maiden speech.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and may I thank you and your team and all the parliamentary staff for their cheerfulness and support in the last few weeks. I promise I will eventually stop asking them how to get to places, but it might not be for a while yet. I'm very pleased to follow the honourable member, and I listened very carefully to her speech, and it was very interesting, and I learned quite a lot from it, I have to say. But then again, those who know me would know that the idea of me doing my maiden speech in a technology debate is probably not the best idea there ever was. But as I rise to make my first contribution, I'm acutely aware of the great honour afforded to me by the constituents of Glasgow West who have elected me to represent their interests in this place. And I will never allow the allure of politics or the mystique of this place to obscure that bigger picture. And although I'm the first member for the new constituency of Glasgow West, I'm conscious too of the contribution made by my predecessors in Glasgow North West and Glasgow Anniesland, who served our communities so well in the past. Carol Monaghan, my immediate predecessor, who championed the issue of ME and worked to give the issue wider prominence, and John Robertson, who succeeded in amending the 2009 Welfare Reform Bill to ensure that registered blind or partially sighted people could claim the higher level of the disability living allowance. But perhaps my most illustrious predecessor was the late Donald Dewar. Donald served in this House for many years and was both a shadow minister and a cabinet minister. Donald was also my MP when I joined the Labour Party, and over the years he became a good friend and was, of course, the father of Scottish devolution. Scotland's first minister, which is really quite an accolade and something that is also quite difficult to say, to be honest. He was also the man, though, who persuaded this working-class woman, brought up in a room and kitchen in Maryhill and on the 21st floor of the Red Road Flats, that she could, and indeed should, be Deputy Presiding Officer of the Scottish Parliament. Encouragement for which I will always be grateful. But my thanks must also go to another Scottish First Minister, Jack McConnell, or I suppose Lord McConnell, as we must now call him, as he serves in the other place, who trusted me to be the Cabinet Secretary for Parliamentary Business and subsequently for Tourism, Culture and Sport. I have to say that I loved both jobs.
and I had the most amazing experiences, not least being able to launch the National Theatre for Scotland and submitting Glasgow's successful bid for the 2014 Commonwealth Games. The experience of working in that cabinet helped me to understand the importance of working across government, and in our case actually working across party, because we were in coalition with the Liberal Democrats, many of whom are still friends to this day. And I think that was the important thing that I learned there, and I'm delighted that this Labour government understands that principle and is using the benefit of joined-up government to make progress. It is also good to see this government's commitment to the open and transparent use of public money. I mentioned that I once lived in the Red Road Flats. For those of you who don't know them, it was a large development of multi-storey flats in the north of Glasgow. The estate housed at its peak more people than the town of St Andrews, but for many years had no shops or facilities. So I sincerely hope that when we build the houses we so badly need across the country, that we will recognise that people need facilities as well as homes. That is responsible planning and responsible use of public money. And I was delighted to hear the Deputy Prime Minister recognise that necessity earlier today in her speech in the Chamber. But I wanted also to talk a little bit about my constituency. I've listened to very many maiden speeches in this chamber up until now, and I've heard people extol the virtues of their constituencies, and I now have a bucket list of places I want to visit. But I have to say that my constituency is very beautiful, but it's not that intrigues me most about it or about which I am most proud. It's the many and wonderful organisations that support those people and those communities around my area. From the G15 project, with young people working so hard in the Drumchapel area, and Drumchapel TV hosted by G15. And I have to say that many a Newsnight presenter could learn something from the young people who interview people for that particular television station. To Drumchapel Food Bank, which for years now has supported some of the most vulnerable people in our community. To Kingsway Connections, again supporting a diverse range of people to achieve the best that's possible in their communities. And of course the Yoker Resource Centre, led by the indefatigable Sandy Busby, which has supported the people of Yoker for decades now. Drumchapel may now be a working class Glasgow overspill estate, but it still has traces of the Antonine Wall, built to delineate the northernmost limit of the Roman Empire. Scotstoun, another one of our local communities, is home to the mighty Glasgow Warriors rugby team, who recently won the United Rugby Championships title. And Victoria Park is the site of a grove of fossilised trees that have stood in that spot for 330 million years. Mr. Speaker, one of the issues that has long concerned me, or sorry, Madam Deputy Speaker, I should say, one of the issues that has long concerned me is the disparity in life expectancy between people in parts of my constituency and their more affluent neighbours in other parts of Scotland. That difference can be anything up to 12 years, and perhaps even more stark is the fact that people in our most deprived areas have a healthy life expectancy gap of 23 years for men and 23.9 years for women. Many of the reasons are obvious: poor housing, low pay, lack of opportunity and poor living conditions. All reasons why I support the New Deal for Workers being spearheaded by the Deputy Prime Minister, and the pursuit of economic growth being pursued by our first female Chancellor of the Exchequer. That people should have comprehensive rights at work and the dignity that comes with it is vitally important. Now, Glasgow West is also home to some notable companies employing large numbers of people. Edrington's, the makers of the Macallan, Highland Park and the famous grouse, other whiskies are available, and Morton's Rolls, who make the perfect accompaniment to the Lorne sausage, a delicacy, I have to say, Deputy Speaker, that is a sad omission from Parliament's restaurants. It It is appropriate in this debate, perhaps, to mention BAE Systems, one of the last client shipbuilders, who recently invested some £14 million in a new training academy. I met some of their 140 new apprentices just a few weeks ago, and their enthusiasm was infectious. But it was also great to see the way in which technology was being incorporated into their training. No longer was it necessary for young welders in training to be exposed to great heat and noxious gases. These young people were working on welding, but doing it virtually. And it was amazing to watch. So realistic and so clever. And indeed, some of the more experienced welders are actually using that technology to practice and rehearse how they will approach the more difficult tasks that they encounter. So that virtual programme is very impressive. And if the Minister or any of his team ever wanted to visit, they just need to tell me and we can make that arrangement. And another large employer is, of course, the NHS. Glasgow West is the home to Gartnavel Hospital and Beatson, the West of Scotland Cancer Centre, famed for its groundbreaking research and treatment since 1886. The Minister himself referred to how much better diagnosis can be with the use of AI and other technologies. And as a cancer survivor myself, I understand just how important this facility is to people across the west of Scotland and beyond. And I'm also aware that early detection and treatment are vital. And it is often within our most deprived communities that the take-up of screening is at its lowest. Now, that situation has to change. And I very much hope that the current Scottish Government is sincere in wishing to work with the UK Government to ensure that that problem and others that beset our NHS can be eradicated on both sides of the border. Mr. Speaker, up until today, when I submitted my resignation, I was also a councillor in my constituency, and I thank all the community groups and organisations that do such great work in Ward 14. Glasgow West is well served by its councillors, but I have to single out my ward colleague, Councillor Paul Carey, BEM, who has represented the Drumchapel Anniesland ward for more than 20 years and who does so with tenacity and dedication. Madam Deputy Speaker, Donald Dewar often spoke about the imbalance in the social arithmetic and the need to rebalance the equation by reducing poverty and giving all of our children the best possible start in life and the opportunity to fulfil their potential. That will only be achieved by working across government, and that is why I welcome the establishment of the Poverty Task Force and why its mission is so important to all our constituents and to the work of this government. Madam Deputy Speaker, people across this country have put their belief in us and put their trust in us, and it's up to us now to make sure we deliver for them.
Yeah. I call Alex Brewer to make her maiden speech.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is a pleasure to follow the Honourable Member for Glasgow West, and I congratulate her on her moving maiden speech and hope to add another place on her bucket list. I am honoured to have been elected as the first Liberal Democrat MP for North East Hampshire, a constituency which has only had two previous MPs. Lord James Arbuthnot, who is now in the other place, known for his important role in supporting Joe Hamilton and other sub-postmasters and mistresses. And Ranald Jayawardena, who likewise wanted the best for our communities and campaigned for better infrastructure locally alongside his ministerial roles. Boundary changes mean that those in Lichpit and Old Basing, who are warmly welcomed into North East Hampshire, were previously represented by Dame Maria Miller in the Basingstoke constituency. She was a strong advocate for women in Parliament and encouraged those of all parties. I am only the second woman to stand for Parliament in North East Hampshire, and only around 15 have stood before me in any of the constituencies now covered by the current boundaries. So it gives me great pride to be in the Parliament with the highest number of women ever, an achievement that would not have been possible without the support of my dad, my late mum, and my husband and children. North East Hampshire is a place people often travel through, by train between London and the West Country, or by road on the A30 or the M3, stopping perhaps at fleet services. Those who live there, however, enjoy good schools, good transport links, low crime and plenty of countryside. All the reasons, in fact, why the place often tips the list of the best places to live in the UK, and why my family and I chose to move there 10 years ago. So I would encourage you, the next time a journey takes you that way, to stop and visit. If you wish to indulge your political history, you could choose to stay at the Four Seasons. The hotel is situated in the former home of Sir Henry St John Mildmay, 5th Baroness of the Dogmersfield Estate, also, coincidentally, a Liberal political candidate in 1865. Or you might choose Highfield Park, where Neville Chamberlain spent his final months. Once you have arrived, there is plenty to experience. History enthusiasts should visit Odium Castle, Basing House, and the Roman city walls at Silchester. Those with a military interest will not be disappointed with the constituency that boasts RAF Odium, Stratfield Say House, the home of the Dukes of Wellington, and Blackbush Airport, created as an airfield in World War II. For nature lovers, there is so much to choose from. The Hazley Heath Nature Reserve, or a sturdy walk up Beacon Hill to look out over Caesar's Camp. And if you like your nature by the water, there's Fleet Pond, the Basingstoke Canal, and our two chalk stream rivers, the Loddon and the Whitewater. After all that, perhaps you are in need of refreshment. North East Hampshire is home to dozens of village pubs, cafes and bakeries, from the award-winning Street Bakery in Old Basing to the Heron on the Lake at Fleet Pond, looking out over the water. There is something for everyone. We even have a local gin distilled at Upton Gray. It is one of the joys of this area that each town and village has its own personality, with a high number of independent businesses that makes each one unique. A walk through Bramley is entirely different from a stroll along Hartley-Whitney High Street or a meander through Yateley. What unites all of these places is the people. Each unique town or village has a strong sense of community, and the people of North East Hampshire are unfailingly generous with their time and energy in pursuit of this goal. This community spirit was seen most recently when Hook Infant School and local homes and businesses were victim to a summer flash flood. People rallied around, helped clean up, raised funds, donated items, hosted friends whose homes were damaged, and offered sympathy. It is in this way that all the communities within North East Hampshire are connected. But this place I love to call home is not without its challenges too. Connecting our towns and villages takes more than goodwill. Our roads, particularly our smaller roads, are in a terrible state. Public transport leaves a lot to be desired, and bus routes are sparse at best. It is also surprising that North East Hampshire is behind the national average in the adoption of 5G mobile services, especially when you consider the above-average employment in the technology sector, one that will be vital for the modernisation of both government and our public services. The investment that is needed to ensure joined-up, efficient public service processes is as vital as the investment needed in North East Hampshire's transport. The UK has a proud history of research and innovation, but when nurses are still taking patient notes with pen and paper, it is clear that action is needed. Indeed, the National Audit Office report only last year cited that outdated IT systems are a key source of inefficiency in government. We cannot be a country needing to catch up. And I hope the government will draw on the expertise of those in the technology sector to quickly implement the best possible solutions while ensuring individuals' personal information is held with the highest possible security. I also encourage the government to consider, in its review of technology in public service, the role that charities play in supporting this sector. The tireless work of organisations like Citizens Advice and the Trussell Trust, as well as countless local and regional charities, are the bedrock of our communities. They support the public sector to deliver many vital services across health, education, housing, criminal justice and more. It is essential, in my view, that these organisations are also invested in and integrated into the new systems that will be created. I look forward to working with those local organisations, those businesses and the people in North East Hampshire, and I thank them for putting their trust in me.
Dr Alice Gardner to make a maiden speech.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I congratulate the honourable members who have made their maiden speeches tonight. I'm honoured to make my maiden speech too during this debate on the use of technology in public services, coming as I have from my previous role in the NHS AI and Digital Regulation Service. Mine is a new constituency with the majority of the old Stoke-on-Trent South and the northern part of the Stone constituencies within its boundaries. Hence, the new Stoke-on-Trent South is a diverse area, combining a great industrial heritage of mining and ceramics with the agricultural and rural communities of Stoke-on-Trent and North Staffordshire. Our urban centre area centres around one of the 6 Staffordshire pottery towns of Longton, which proudly boasts the largest number of our iconic bottle ovens, including those of the Gladstone Pottery Museum, where the Great Pottery Throwdown was filmed. Naturally, ceramics and tableware are a major part of our history and culture. Indeed, you can spot a Stokey anywhere in the world, for they will be turning over any cup or plate to see if it comes from Stoke-on-Trent. You know it. I invite members present to join the Turnover Club and investigate the provenance of pottery and china right here in the Palace of Westminster. Of course, our industrial strength extends beyond that of ceramics and includes innovative firms such as Goodwin's with high-tech mechanical and refractory engineering divisions, who I had the pleasure of speaking to last week. Goodwin's, along with other excellent businesses, including Trentum's Minuteman Press, offer dozens of high-skilled apprenticeships, giving our workers award-winning opportunities to develop the key skills for the future. Indeed, within North Staffordshire, we have Keele and Staffordshire Universities, a medical and veterinary school, and excellent further education colleges offering great courses and apprenticeships. The rural part of the constituency includes Blythebridge and Barlaston and extends to Tyne, Swinnerton, Yarnfield and Alton, with many villages in between. It's where my partner Jim's family have lived and run their sawmills for generations. Walk anywhere in our countryside and you will see the public footpath signposts made by Jim himself. History, land, family and a love for our North Staffordshire home, are embodied in those signs. Indulge me too, as I mention my daughters Chrissy and Lucy and my sister Siobhan, and thank them alongside Jim and his children William and Sophie for putting up with me in my passion to build a better future for everyone's children in my constituency. Thank you are also due to the great team who supported me throughout. With this new combined constituency, I must acknowledge the hard work of the 2 former Conservative members, Jack Brereton and Bill Cash. Jack was MP for Stoke-on-Trent South from 2017. I commend him for his work in tackling the scourge of monkey dust and for his ambitions for better transport across Stoke and North Staffordshire. I commit to continuing this important work and welcome the moves of this government to rebuild our transport services to be one for the people, benefiting our economy, opportunity and indeed environment. Bill Cash has had a parliamentary career spanning 40 years. Indeed, Bill was an MP before Jack was born. I wish Bill well in his retirement. In Stoke-on-Trent South, Jack was preceded by the Labour MPs Rob Flello and George Stevenson, and I thank George for his no-nonsense advice and support. I should also mention another MP called Jack, and that is Jack Ashley, a Labour MP who I have the honour of being compared to, and this is quite a formidable challenge to meet. Jack was elected in 1966, the year I was born, and the same year we won the World Cup, in which the great Stoke City player Gordon Banks played a key role, and whose statue stands proudly outside the Bet365 Stadium in my constituency. So 1966 was a good year all round by my reckoning, as we can now add me to its accomplishments as its first female MP for Stoke-on-Trent South. Jack Ashley became profoundly deaf whilst an MP, and was reportedly the first deaf member of any elected assembly. While initially thinking he would need to resign, he turned to technology using a Palantype transcription system. Jack's visit to the BBC's CFAX department even inspired a project to develop a computer programme to convert stenographic outputs to TV subtitles. As a hard-of-hearing MP who wears AI-enabled hearing aids, it is fitting I remember Jack Ashley in today's debate. It is the norm for MPs in their maiden speeches to claim their constituency is the most beautiful. I could, of course, argue this, describing our quintessential countryside, pretty villages and farms, the canals and, of course, the River Trent. Or I could talk of the beauty I find in our industrial landscape. I'm going to go again in a minute now. However, I want to talk about the people, because it is in their spirit, their friendliness and their sense of community. This is where true beauty lies, in the heart of the people. From Tracy, who runs Mere Watch, and Arfan, who owns Sizzler's Pizzas, coming together to feed and clothe the children in need, with no expectation of thanks nor profit. To the fantastic Peggies, who I had the pleasure to meet at their summer picnic, working to support SEND families with no-nonsense women such as Michelle and Keeley, cracking on and getting stuff sorted. Or Jason, passionately fighting to clean up our waterways, and Craig, battling grief from the loss of a friend to campaign for safer roads. To the village, who reached out to me worried about asylum seekers, not because they had given in to the politics of division and hate, but because they were worried the children weren't getting any schooling. Who, when I attended their summer fete, had reached out and invited the refugees to come and join in the fun, and come they did. This is the heart of the people of my constituency, reaching out and caring for those in need, without judgment, with friendly, no-nonsense practical support, and in believing in the power of community action. This is true beauty. And I pledge to all the people in my constituency, I carry them in my heart and mind at all times. I am acutely aware of the trust they have placed in me. I will get some things wrong, no doubt, but know this, I will always do my best. I will work hard, I will always hold a vision of a better life for them, and I will always fight for the place that is my home. And so I turn back to the topic of this debate, that of technology in our public services. But one more little trip into history, if I may. In Barlaston, we have the world of Wedgwood, where I like to treat myself to a genteel cream tea, drinking out of Wedgwood Tyne and pretending I am posh. I hardly recommend visiting. Founder Josiah Wedgwood was a great innovator and entrepreneur, inventing creamware and green glaze, just to name just two. He understood that science, in his case chemistry, practically applied in an industrial context, turbocharged innovation and development. He was also a master marketeer, apparently, pioneering money-back guarantees, illustrated catalogues, and buy one, get one free. You can only imagine, if he were alive today, what his innovative and entrepreneurial spirit would make of this digital world. Josiah was a polymath, and that is something worth noting. It is important we recognise that in considering technological innovation, we must take a multidisciplinary approach with full participation of those who will implement, use and govern and be impacted by the technology day to day. Technology in the public services offers huge potential, but there are also risks, if not properly developed and deployed, as we have seen with biased risk assessment models for child welfare and benefit fraud models. In my previous career with the NHS, I saw the great potential that diagnostic technologies can offer, particularly in radiology, which I saw in action when I visited the radiology department at the Royal Stoke, for example. Such technologies can be transformative, streamlining pathways and saving hours of work, but they do not and should not replace human oversight. Proper governance and regulation are required, and always with a safety-first principle. It must be transparent and accountable. I hope we get it right. In fact, we must. In delivering transformative change in our public services, we must develop the governance and regulation that will maximise the benefits and mitigate against the risks. Not just for the people of my constituency, nor our country, but by moving forward to a bright new age with modern and innovative public services, as they once were and as they will be again, we can be an example to the world.
Chris Coghlan to make his maiden speech.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for the opportunity to speak in this debate and make my maiden speech. I was moved by the Honourable Member for Stoke-on-Trent South's maiden speech, particularly for your devotion to your constituents, but also I already have some Stoke-on-Trent pottery in my kitchen, and I'm always open for more. I would like to pay tribute to my predecessor, Sir Paul Beresford. Sir Paul significantly tightened the legislation around child protection, which, as a father of 3 little girls, I and parents across the country are grateful to him for that. And I am hugely honoured to be elected as Dorking and Horley's first Liberal MP in over 100 years, which is my home. And I grew up in Portslade, which is just half a mile outside the constituency. And growing up, I was astounded by the beauty of our Surrey hills, from Leaf Hill to Box Hill, and I still am. And when I visit places across my constituency, I often think about my mum, because she visited these places too, and I know they brought her great joy. She died 3 months after I was born of ovarian cancer, and that is why the Liberal Democrat 62-day cancer treatment guarantee is so important to me. And growing up, I developed a passion for public service, which helped me move beyond the pain of her loss. And that is why when I saw that ISIS was murdering people, I joined the Foreign Office and the Army Reserve and served in Iraq. That is why I left my job in a hedge fund to start a charity training African entrepreneurs with Violet Basingi, a refugee, a Rwandan refugee from the genocide. And that is why I'm here now. Madam Deputy Speaker, statistics show that one of the worst places in the country for the special needs crisis is Surrey. A head teacher in Horley wrote to me to say that she has to take special needs children even though she does not have the specially trained staff to support them, which is their right. One mum wrote to me to say that her son had been out of school for 2 years, with no tuition and no placement in between. She's now having the same struggle with her daughter, and that she is one of just hundreds of families across Surrey. Imagine what the impact is on that little boy's life chances from missing 2 years of school. Imagine instead if he had been in a nurturing educational environment, one that was integrated with employers who cater to the unique talents of autistic people, such as above average analytical capabilities, attention to detail, and conscientiousness. Indeed, perhaps we should consider the contribution that autistic people could make to the technology that we need in public services, the topic of today's debate. Yeah. Sadly, the outcome can all too often be very different, as I discovered some years ago. Madam Deputy Speaker, a few years ago I went back to my old house in Portslade, and Fiona, who brought off my dad, showed me around. And Fiona and her daughter, Cara, are in the gallery today. Fiona showed me every room in the house, except my old bedroom, which strangely had my name, Christopher, written above the door. On my next visit, Fiona told me what had happened to her autistic son, Christopher. As a young man living alone in Leeds, he'd been unable to get the support that was his right. And horrifically, he was exploited and murdered by a man who'd just been released from jail. And of the many things that went terribly wrong in Christopher's case, one was that the Mental Capacity Act 2005 has something called a presumption of capacity that can prevent the NHS and social services from intervening when they should. In fact, a 2014 House of Lords Select Committee in a post-legislative scrutiny report found that the Act is failing those that it is designed to protect and empower. Ever since Christopher's death, Fiona has been campaigning to change this law. And Madam Deputy Speaker, it is my intention that Fiona will succeed in changing this law. And I'm proud that the Right Honourable Member for Godalming and Ash, Fiona's MP, and I are working on this together. Christopher's MP was the Right Honourable Member for Leeds South, and he is, of course, a Cabinet Minister, so bound by collective responsibility. But Fiona has been full of praise for the support that he has given her and her family, because I believe that it would be right and honourable for Labour, Conservative and Liberal Democrat MPs to change this law together. Because that change would bring comfort to Fiona, console Clara, and would mean that if in 10, 20 or 30 years' time, if there's another little boy or little girl born in Christopher's circumstances, they might avoid Christopher's fate. That, Madam Deputy Speaker, is why I came to this place. I came here for those who need to move beyond pain to peace. Thank you.
Natasha Irons to make her maiden speech.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for Dorking and Horley for his moving and powerful words. It is an extraordinary thing to become a Member of Parliament, and becoming a Labour Member of Parliament that gets to sit on this side of the chamber is even more extraordinary. And I share the sense of pride and urgency that we've heard from honourable members from Glasgow West, North East Hampshire, Stoke-on-Trent and Stoke-on-Trent South in their maiden speeches, and it's something that I share and congratulate them on their contributions to this debate. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is the honour of my life to represent Croydon East in this place. So thank you to the people in this new constituency for putting their faith in me. I will never forget what a privilege it is to be their voice in Parliament, and I will do all that I can to fight for Croydon's future. And as South London's most iconic borough, Croydon is a place so big that it needs 4 members of Parliament to represent it. And like the reunion tour of a much-loved 90s band, my constituency has been reformed under an old name with new boundaries. So I would like to pay tribute to my predecessors, the Right Honourable Member for Croydon South for his work for the people of Selsdon and for his commitment to public service. Now, whilst I cannot apologise for campaigning against him in the last election, I can attest to the number of constituents who, when I met them on the doorstep, would speak highly of him and his contribution to their community. And to my honourable friend, the member for Croydon West, not only Croydon's first female MP, the founder and chair of the APPG on knife crime, and now a minister in this government, but also the kind of MP that everybody knows someone who has been helped by her. I want to thank her for her kindness, advice and encouragement over the past few months. I hope to build on her legacy and continue to stand up for Croydon in the way that she has always done. I am thrilled to join them and my honourable friend, the member for Streatham and Croydon North, someone who continues to work tirelessly for his constituents and now as Secretary of State is taking on the urgent fight to clean up our waters. I look forward to us working together in the best interests of Croydon. Madam Deputy Speaker, Croydon East represents so much of what is great about our city, whether it's the bustling life of South Norwood, the close-knit communities of Addiscombe and New Addington, or the stunning views from Shirley Hills. Croydon East is a place filled with diversity, ambition and strong values. But Madam Deputy Speaker, even in this vibrant corner of South London, the shadow of inequality persists. Whether it's a child in Croydon East being twice as likely to live in poverty as one just a few miles away in Croydon South, or a man living in New Addington North having a life expectancy a decade shorter than a woman living in Shirley South. These stark disparities remind us that for too many, they remain trapped in the cycle of inequality. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, when we talk about technology in public services, we must not get lost in grand plans and digital transformations. We must remember those who use these services and how they will be put to use. Because what do they mean for the community leaders at the coalface of the cost of living crisis, who run services like the Food Stop, Pathfinders and the Community Family Project in New Addington that often step up when there is no one else to step in? What do they mean to groups like the Friends of Shirley Library who are fighting to keep their library open, a place that doesn't just tackle loneliness and isolation, but also plays a critical role in closing the digital divide? And what do they mean to my constituent Michael Lyons, a veteran who has campaigned to ensure the memory of service people from the First World War lives on? And how will digital public services remain accessible to him as much as they are accessible to the rest of us? Because with considered application of technology, we have an opportunity to break down barriers instead of creating new ones, to bring people closer to democracy instead of driving them further away, and to rebuild our public services so they work better for the people that need them the most. And as someone who grew up in South London, in a family that was always political but didn't think that politics was for people like us, I know that the decisions that we make in this place have the power to change lives for the better. Because choices that have been made in the past in this room took my family from sleeping on our living room floor to decent social housing. They enabled my mother to go back to university, to retrain and to get a better job. And they gave me the opportunity to go to university, to get a career in public service broadcasting, to serve my community as a local councillor and to make my way to these benches. As an MP in London's youngest borough, I want to spend my time here putting the well-being of our young people back on the political agenda. There is no plan longer term than ensuring that our young people have the opportunities they deserve so that they can go on to live the successful lives that we want them to. We need a national plan for what it is to be a young person in this country, and I look forward to showing how Croydon stands ready to lead this vital work. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, every member of this House will have those people in their lives who have supported them to get here, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank mine. I want to thank my honourable friend, the member for Mitcham and Voaden, who allowed me to see that there was room for people like me in places like this. Without her encouragement and advice, I simply would not be here, and I can only hope to be half the MP that she is. To my mum and dad for their support and unwavering belief in me, it is their hard work and determination that changed our lives, and I am so proud to continue our family's track record of serving our country. And to my spectacular husband, who encouraged me to get involved in politics because he was sick of me shouting at the TV. Thank you for your patience, your endless support, and for being the greatest dad imaginable to our lads. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is really an extraordinary thing to be a Member of Parliament. I hope that in our time here, we make choices in this room that change the lives of the people outside of it for the better. Thank you.
Caroline Voaden to make her maiden speech.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to make my maiden speech. And I would just like to congratulate all the other members who've made their maiden speeches this evening, from the whisky and sausages of Glasgow West to the pottery of Stoke-on-Trent and the young people of Croydon, and the beautiful tour of North East Hampshire, which I have driven through many, many times. But I would particularly like to pay tribute to my colleague from Stoke-on-Trent South for delivering an incredibly powerful and moving maiden speech with no notes. So very impressive. Joining in with this debate on the role of technology in public services is very relevant following several conversations I had during recess about the challenges of connecting Devon and in particular the South Hams and Dartmoor to high-speed internet. It's something I will be coming back to with the Minister. But if we are going to support rural communities, small businesses, the self-employed and those studying online, then we have to get them connected. But we must also be aware of the danger of digital exclusion. For all those who cannot use computers, particularly for older people, we must ensure that there is always a decent working offline alternative to apps and QR codes. I'm very proud to say that I am the first non-Conservative MP to be elected in my large rural constituency for over 100 years. It had a very short flirtation with liberalism in 1923 when Henry Vivian was elected. Sadly, he only lasted 10 months before being replaced by another Conservative. Vivian was the founder of the cooperative housing movement, and it's a real shame that he didn't last a bit longer because we could really do with his legacy in South Devon. It is a spectacular part of the UK, from the Art Deco hotel sitting atop Burr Island to the eastern slopes of Dartmoor, the rivers Dart and Avon that meander south to the sea, and the headland at Berry Head where you can spot dolphins playing in the water, to the rolling hills and hedges of the South Hams. This is the place I made home 17 years ago after leaving London. I took my two small daughters to Devon to be near a family after the death of my husband from cancer in 2003, and it's great that they are both with us today. Being widowed at 34 with very young children is a brutal experience, but it taught me many things. The power of community, the value of friendship and family, the strength of support from kindred spirits. And here I would like to pay tribute to the Widowed and Young organisation, which I chaired for a couple of years. Now, hanging out with a bunch of widows may not sound like much fun. But being with people who understand what you're going through at a difficult time, who can truly empathise, is transformational. So I will always champion community and support groups who bring people together. Leaving London for a rural community was a bit of a gamble. Busy London play parks were replaced by empty fields, and I was almost the only single parent in the school. I did feel like an outsider. We had no internet connection, and we had to dial in through a satellite dish on the roof, which did drive me completely insane. But we got some battery hens, and we watched in awe as their feathers grew back and they began laying eggs again, and I learnt to manage a septic tank and oil-fired central heating. I navigated the complete lack of buses and the absence of breakfast and after-school clubs, which was not easy for a single working mother. Rural life poses many extra challenges. So 3 years later, we moved into Totnes. I met my lovely second husband, and this special town became home. It is a town that is often described as alternative, but I prefer to say it's a place that knows the meaning of the word community. A place where it's quite normal to question the idea that a planet with finite resources can support infinite growth. A place where the seriously wealthy question why they are not being taxed more to support those who have less. A place where radical thinking is seen as a really important thing to do. My constituency is where Agatha Christie lived, by the River Dart, and further downstream, naval recruits are trained at Britannia Royal Naval College. We have wild camping on Dartmoor, long may it continue, paddleboarding in the bay, surfing on the south coast, and the world's biggest pirate festival in Brixham. Ancient family farms and stunning beaches and thousands of miles of hedgerows, and the revival of the Searle bunting, a success story championed by my predecessor but one, Sarah Wollaston, who sat on several benches in this house. From near extinction, there are now over 1,000 Searle bunting pairs singing from the farmland of South Devon and Cornwall because of the environmental work done by farmers in my constituency, proof that farming for food and restoring nature can go hand in hand. We have one of the country's largest fish markets at Brixham, as well as shell fishermen, oyster farms and scallop divers. An energetic conversation about sustainability and the long-term future of the fishing industry is being had, and I will work with fishers and scientists so that we can create policy here that ensures we can continue to fish while protecting stocks for the future. I also pay tribute to my predecessor, Anthony Mangnall, who worked hard to establish the Independent Lifeboat Association, and they, together with the RNLI, provide an incredible emergency service for all those who work or play on the water. On land, we have hundreds of hospitality businesses that offer a brilliant experience, and I recommend you all come and try them out. But they have taken a massive hit over the past few years, and they really need our support now to survive. But there is so much more to South Devon that doesn't make it on to the postcards or the chocolate boxes. We have Britain's most expensive seaside town in Salcombe, where an average house costs £970,000. But not far away, we have left-behind neighbourhoods where people struggle to make ends meet on low-paid seasonal work and live in poor-quality housing. This disparity of wealth can be hard to get your head around. So I would like us to think really hard and creatively in this place about how we can help even out our society, so that no one is raising a disabled child in a mould-filled home within sight of a millionaire's yacht in the harbour below. The lack of public transport leads to loneliness, isolation, and adds to the lack of opportunities for our young people for work and socialising. We must invest in it as a public good. Our schools in Devon are hugely underfunded compared to schools across the UK, again impacting the life chances of our children. We have communities that have been literally hollowed out by second homes to the extent that schools are closing, village shops have long gone, and the last pubs are closing. Families are being evicted so landlords can turn their homes over to short-term holiday lets. And second homes registered as businesses are causing our council to lose out on millions of pounds a year of desperately needed resources. We must close this loophole. We have businesses struggling to get staff because no one can afford to live nearby and there is no social housing. Yet developers build and build to support the immigration of wealthy retired from other areas of the country. We have more than met our housing targets, but we are still in a desperate housing crisis. The solution is not just build, build, build. It's about land prices, what we build and where, and who buys those homes. What we need is social housing, more community land trust schemes, innovation and ideas to break out of the developer-led disaster we are in. We are the home of innovation and good ideas, and I would like to quickly highlight one particular organisation, Landworks, and I declare an interest here as I worked there for 6 months in 2018. Landworks is an inspirational prisoner rehabilitation charity, which I hope the new Prisons Minister will soon visit, given the crisis we are in nationally. The amazing work that happens here is shown to cut reoffending rates and reintegrates prisoners into society. We also have a growing cluster of high-tech photonics companies attracting talent from home and abroad, providing highly skilled jobs, exactly the kind of modern manufacturing this country desperately needs. So it was disappointing to hear last week that they are missing out on partnerships, funding and investment because of Brexit, with one company weighing up whether it will now move its headquarters out of the UK and into the EU. You won't be surprised to hear that as a former member of the European Parliament for the South West who got involved in politics in June 2016, I will continue to try and find ways to mitigate and lessen the damage that Brexit has caused, particularly to my shellfish exporters, my food and wine importers, our musicians, and all those sectors that are struggling to find staff.
Yeah.
South Devon is a constituency of many parts, and it is right up there at the top of the list of the most challenging constituencies in which to deliver Lib Dem leaflets. So I want to finish by expressing my heartfelt thanks to, well, maybe Jamie beats me, yeah? I want to express my heartfelt thanks to an incredible group of volunteers who supported my campaign, many of whom were not Liberal Democrats, and who were lending their vote and their time and their shoe leather because they wanted to be represented by a different kind of voice. And also, my dad, with us today, who never tired of campaigning to help me get here. And I would just like to say, I'm really sorry I didn't campaign harder for you in 1983 when you came quite close to sitting on these benches. I couldn't have done it without them all, and it is the honour of my life to represent them and all the residents of South Devon. I will work hard every day for them, for our environment, for our planet, and for a different kind of politics.
Yeah. Alice Macdonald to make her maiden speech.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's a privilege to make my maiden speech today and to follow the members for South Devon and Croydon East, and may I congratulate them on their moving maiden speeches. They brought to life vividly their constituencies, and I hope I can do the same. I'm proud to be the Labour and Cooperative Member of Parliament for Norwich North, and my first message is one of thanks to the people of Norwich North for putting their faith in me. However you voted, I am here to serve you. I want to pay tribute to my predecessor, Chloe Smith, who served Norwich North for 15 years as a Minister, Secretary of State, including for Science and Innovation, and, of course, as a constituency MP. Like me, Chloe is a Norfolk girl. We went to nearby secondary schools, and I know one of her passions was opening up opportunity for young people, and that is something else we share. The last Labour Member of Parliament for Norwich North was Dr. Ian Gibson, a fierce advocate for our community, and it is apt to make my speech in this debate given his passion for science and innovation. And I'm pleased to say that a new fellowship is being set up in his name at the Quadram Institute in Norwich, the Invest in ME Research Ian Gibson Fellowship. I also follow in the footsteps of Dorothy Jewson, elected in 1923 to represent Norwich as one of the first 3 Labour women MPs. She was known for action to tackle poverty and was key to the creation of many of Norwich's beautiful parks. She's also noted for refusing to wear a hat in the chamber, and I fully agree with her when she said women were not in Parliament to discuss dress or millinery, but to do something. And doing something is what I intend to do. My priorities in this House are shaped by what I have heard from my constituents. That is why I will fight for better health, better homes, good education, decent jobs, and to tackle the biggest crises we face, the cost of living and the climate crisis. Madam Deputy Speaker, I couldn't be prouder to come from Norfolk. I grew up in a rural Norfolk village and have made my home in Norwich North. It is a constituency that spreads from the northern reaches of the city, from the estates of Marcross and the Heartsease, The pubs of NR3 are amazing green spaces such as Mousehold Heath and Waterloo Park, and into the Broadland area, comprising Sprowston, Thorpe St Andrew, Oldcatton, Helston and Drayton, each with their own unique identities. And as many other members have alluded to, our strength comes from our active and vibrant communities. Local organisations, volunteers, parish and town councils bring so much to our area, like the Helston Dementia Support Group that I visited just last week, the Sprowston Youth Engagement Project, the many food banks and community hubs, or the environmental organisations working to protect nature. And whilst many of the better-known landmarks in Norwich, from the magnificent cathedrals to the castle, may be in my honourable friend's constituency of Norwich South, Norwich North is home to many unique attributes and many things that can provide inspiration to our government, and I want to touch on just a few today. We are home to Norwich Airport, from which I flew this summer, which was very convenient, but it is also a key driver of economic growth, and where they are pioneering green aviation, with the first all-electric pleasure flight launched last year from Norwich Airport. We are also home to one of the first large-scale social housing estates in the country, Mile Cross, which marked its centenary just last year. When it was built, there was a desperate need for homes, and that remains the case today, particularly social and affordable housing. And in the many industrial estates, you can find example after example of small and medium-sized businesses harnessing creativity, innovation, and providing much-needed jobs. Outside the boundaries of Norwich North, we are also home to a huge life sciences cluster at Norwich Research Park, which again is relevant to this speech today. To give just one example, scientists from the park are working closely with the UK Health and Food Standards agencies to harness the power of microbiology to protect our food supply. These same technologies which we used during the pandemic to identify COVID variants for the government. And can I thank the Secretary of State for visiting Norwich just this year with the Wikipedia founder, Jimmy Wales, to meet with students and staff from Norwich University of the Arts, which is providing so much inspiration to, I hope, many of the innovators of the future. We are, of course, also home to the Canaries, Norwich City, and reportedly the oldest football chant in the world, On the Ball City. And whilst the member for Ipswich is not, sadly, in this house, I did want to remind him that whilst we did not make it to the Premier League, Oasis has broken up and reformed, and Ipswich has still not beaten the Canaries. So remind him of that when you see him. And I also want to mention the great women's football we have in Norfolk and Norwich. And in fact, just a few weeks ago, I went to the opening of the Lauren Hemp Community Pitch in Broadland constituency. But Madam Deputy Speaker, for all its advantages, Norwich North faces many challenges. In Norwich, 3 in 10 kids live in poverty. Thousands are on the housing waiting list. We are a dental desert, and too many children, particularly those with special educational needs and disabilities, do not receive the education they deserve. And that must change. But Madam Deputy Speaker, as important as what I intend to fight for is how I do it. Time and time again, people told me that they are sick of us shouting at each other at adversarial politics. Norfolk is now a rainbow county. If anyone saw the election results, we have practically every single party represented there. And I promise to work with anyone and everyone who wants to get the best for our area. I also want to note Norwich's long history as a place of refuge. It is officially a city of sanctuary. A tolerant, welcoming place, and I know that will continue to be the case. And after the events of this summer, that is more important than ever. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm proud to stand here as a Labour and cooperative woman MP. My path into politics has been inspired by many women, starting with my mother, who is still persevering in the gallery up there, and I thank her for that, and the inspiration she provided me as a local councillor when she showed me the difference politics can make. And I want to thank my family, my dad, my twin sister, my friends and my partner for all their support. I am also privileged to have worked for the Member of Parliament, the former Member of Parliament for Camborne and Peckham, Harriet Harman, who taught me so much about politics, about sticking to your principles, about taking on the most difficult of challenges, and always, always saying thank you. Madam Deputy Speaker, I joined this House after years of working in international development, having worked in some of the poorest countries of the world, and also of serving communities as a councillor. In everything I have done, from the local to the global, I have focused on fighting inequality, injustice, and opening up opportunity, on bringing people together to find solutions and working through differences. And that is the approach I will continue to take, to stand up for opportunity, to stand against inequality in Norwich North, nationally and internationally, and to always focus on what unites us. And Madam Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, I want to finish as I began, with a message to the people of Norwich North. Your home is my home, and I pledge to give it my all to stand up for you, for our fine city and our great county.
Yeah. I am going to call the front benchers at 9:40, so that gives probably our last backbench speaker 10 minutes. Mike Martin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for calling me, and I'm particularly delighted to be called in a debate on technology in public service, of which more later. And I'd like to congratulate all the other maiden speakers today. It's clear that we're going to have not just a good Parliament, but a great Parliament. I come to this place from Tunbridge Wells, and Tunbridge Wells is famous for a few things, not least the abilities of its residents in writing to the newspapers letter pages. And of course, I'm speaking of this phrase, disgusted of Tunbridge Wells. And I can assure my honourable friends, as someone who's spent the last 2 months perusing the inbox of the MP for Tunbridge Wells, that my constituents have lost none of their ability for forceful expression with the pen. But this phrase, disgusted of Tunbridge Wells, does actually confuse me, because why is it that they are disgusted? For they live in the best constituency in the country. And honourable members who don't believe me, I invite them to come to Tunbridge Wells this September, later this month, when we are hosting the World Cup for Subbuteo. And this is a big deal. It's previously in Rome, it's now in Tunbridge Wells, and honourable members may not know that Subbuteo is actually from Tunbridge Wells, so we invented it, and the factory that used to create the kits that were sent out to everyone. I can see some recognition from some honourable members. Perhaps there are some aficionados of Subbuteo in the House today, Madam Deputy Speaker. And so because of this fact, we from Tunbridge Wells are particularly proud of being able to say that this September, football will be coming home to Tunbridge Wells. Honourable members may be pleased at this late hour, and I can see I've got 8 minutes left to go, Madam Deputy Speaker, will be pleased that I won't give a long geographical survey of my entire constituency. Suffice it to say that the villages which make up the greater part of my constituency are the most beautiful anywhere, and the towns, of which we have 3, Southborough, Paddockwood and Tunbridge Wells, have had visitors of 4 centuries for sport, for recreation, so hop picking in the case of Paddockwood, and of course Royal Tunbridge Wells, where people come to take the water. And perhaps our most famous visitor who came to take the water was Henrietta Maria, who was Queen of England and wife of King Charles III. Now, Henrietta, if I can call her that, was passing through a period of infertility, so to say, and she came to Tunbridge Wells to take the waters, and shortly after fell pregnant with King Charles II. And we know that King Charles II, of course, restored the monarchy, or was restored to the monarchy, and shortly thereafter we had the Bill of Rights, the Glorious Revolution, and so if you'll forgive me, Madam Deputy Speaker, for a slight bit of hyperbole, I think we can safely say that Tunbridge Wells is the source of modern British democracy. It is, of course, right that I speak of my immediate predecessor, Greg Clark, who I know is a good friend of yours. Greg was, in addition to serving the Crown as a minister, he was a chair of a select committee. He was the epitome of the constituency MP. Now, many of us have spent the last couple of years knocking on doors around our constituency and speaking to future constituents. And as you know, when you knock on doors, you tend to hear the same things, and themes seem to come out. And of course, the theme in Tunbridge Wells was that Greg Clark is a good bloke. And you'd knock on a door, and you'd say, "Well, how are they going?" And they go, "Well, we had this big family problem, and he spoke to the relevant government department, and his office went above and beyond." And you think, "Oh, bit deflated. You go to the next door and they'd say, well, actually, he was wonderful. He not only did he solve the problem, he came to see us personally to explain what he had done. It was utterly disheartening campaigning, I can tell you, over the last 2 years. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, I was utterly delighted when he stepped down. I wish him the very best of luck. He's going to run a technology innovation cluster at the University of Warwick, so perhaps the Secretary of State would like to reach out to him. He's a good guy to know. So I would like to finish on a serious topic, Madam Deputy Speaker, and that is defence of His Majesty's realm. And it's been said so much that it fades into the background, but the world that we live in today is more unpredictable and more dangerous than it has been since the last 80 years. And of course, it is the things that we understand. It's geopolitics. There is a perceived or a relative decline of Western power, and we have, previously middling powers jockeying for space and seeking to rewrite the international order. And I don't need to name countries for honourable members to know who I'm talking about. But overlaid across that, there are a number of global trends like climate change, demography, migration, technology regulation. And as geopolitics pulls us apart, of course, all of these challenges require that we work together. So it's quite a difficult needle to thread. Now, with this going on, the state of the UK military is dire. We have an army that cannot deploy a division. We have an air force that cannot defend its own airfields. And we have a navy that cannot crew its own ships. And sitting above that concerning situation is a hole where British strategy should sit. And I stand here as someone who spent 2 years at the sharp end of British strategy in Afghanistan. And I can tell you, Madam Deputy Speaker, when you're fighting a war at that level and bullets are flying and people are dying, it breaks you when there's no strategy, when the country that has sent you there does not have a strategy. And this is a non-partisan point, because all three main parties sat in government, of course including my own, during the period that we were in Afghanistan. But Afghanistan, excuse me, can I have some water? But Afghanistan is not... what happened in Afghanistan is not unique for British foreign policy. Well, thank you. Okay. Afghanistan is not unique when it comes to British foreign policy. We haven't really had a clear strategy for 30 years. And so it is a very, very good thing that the government is initiating a strategic defence review. But previous defence reviews have maintained this illusion, really, that Britain is a global power without giving sufficient resources to back up those ideas and those policy goals that we're trying to follow. And so I have a piece of advice for the government. Before, in this review, the government starts talking about planes and tanks and ships, and that is technology in public service, they must have a clear idea of what British strategy is. And by clear, I mean realistic. And of course, realistic means matching your goals and your aims to the resources that you are willing to put in it. And that's quite a difficult question to ask, which is why successive governments have fudged it for the last few decades. And so there is an easier question that the government can answer. And if it can answer this question, the rest of the review will flow smoothly. And that question is, in military terms, is Britain a global expeditionary military power? Or is it a power dedicated to ensuring regional security in the Euro-Atlantic area. So that's the area from the Arctic to the Mediterranean and from Greenland to Suez. And you can't do both. You can only do one. So if the government can answer that question accurately and clearly, then all of the other subsidiary questions will follow on. Questions like who our friends are and who our allies are.
Benches at 9:40. Saqib Bhatti, please.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to start by first of all paying tribute to all the members who did their maiden speeches today. I congratulate each and every one of them on this nerve-wracking experience. And I know that we may not always agree on many things, we may agree on a lot, but clearly they will all be formidable contributors to this House. I'd also like to start by welcoming the ministerial team to their posts and welcoming the new Secretary of State. As my honourable friend, the Shadow Secretary of State, said in his opening remark, the front bench have my utmost respect for serving in public office. Being a minister is a great privilege, and we know that it also places burdens on those closest around us, so I do genuinely wish them well. I know the civil servants I work with in the department, including those in my private office, were hard-working, they were dynamic, and they were top-notch. And I'm sure the ministers will have the same experiences that I had. As His Majesty's opposition, of course, we will hold the government to account. We will challenge them where challenge is required. But let me be clear, our sole intention is only to ensure that the United Kingdom remains at the forefront of global innovation and technological advancement. And they may not believe me when I say this, but I do want them to be successful because their successes are the nation's successes. So it's in that spirit that I welcome some of the announcements around enhancing technological use in the public sector, because as has already been said in this debate, productivity in the public sector does lag behind that of the private sector. And while the private sector has largely recovered from the pandemic, the public sector remains less efficient than it was before the pandemic. And this is important for two reasons. The public sector, our services that we are so privileged to have, whether it's the National Health Service or our police, to name just two, represent 20% of the national output. So improving technology in our public services means improving the very services that the British public rely on. And the second reason this is so important is that these services are funded on taxpayers' money. It's not our money. It's not the Labour Party's money, it is hard-working British people who pay those taxes for these services. So it is morally right that we all do all we can to make our public services fit for purpose and as efficient as possible. And that's why the previous Conservative government launched the Comprehensive Public Service Productivity Review to address low levels of public sector productivity. In our National Health Service, we utilised AI to cut administration, to keep more staff on the front line and increase the speed in which people are diagnosed, including better diagnoses of stroke, lung and breast cancer. Our police officers were kept on the streets rather than pushing pens, with the use of technology to speed up simple administrative tasks, which meant that crime fell in every part of the UK, except, of course, in Labour-run London. So we see and welcome the value of better technological uses in the public sector. But I do have some questions for the Minister and the Secretary of State, which I hope the Minister will be able to answer on his behalf. Firstly, over the summer, we were all appalled by the riots that gripped this nation and the role that social media played. Digital accessibility for our most vulnerable matters, and part of that must be that the public have trust in using social media and online platforms. Anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim incidents have seen a huge rise online, and I know ministers will have met with social media companies, including with X. So can the Minister please clarify what actions will now be taken as we move forward to ensure that social media is not used to perpetuate and amplify anti-Semitic and anti-Muslim hatred? Secondly, one of my last acts as Minister for Tech and the Digital Economy was to instruct officials in the department to start looking at reviewing and refreshing the government's digital inclusion strategy and to present options. While the timing of the general election prevented this work from making progress, there is no reason why this work can't continue now. So will the Minister confirm that she will continue with this work, and will she commit to ensuring that necessary funds are put aside so our public services are more digitally inclusive? And we on this side of the House recognise the importance of making our public services truly accessible. And as the last review occurred 10 years ago, will she commit to ensuring that the review is carried out in a timely manner? Because for our public services to be truly inclusive, they need to be digitally inclusive, and I look forward to hearing her response. I'm also keen to know what happened to the AI bill, the legislation that the Secretary of State promised so much while he was in opposition, and what he intends to do around AI regulation. Perhaps the Minister could share what assessment she's made of how many AI companies will be created as a result of his plans, how much investment will be generated, and how many new jobs will also be made. And why was the AI bill not ready for the King's speech? And the Secretary of State, I want to turn to him because he's had a very busy summer. Whether it was productive is another question. Countries across the world are brimming with ambition, investing in some of the most exciting and transformative technologies like artificial intelligence, ensuring that they are at the forefront of global technological innovation. And let there be no doubt, this is a global race. And I already fear that the Labour Party in their first few months in office may have already done enough to ensure that this great nation of ours never comes close to winning that race. The previous Conservative government set out an ambition to be a science and tech superpower by 2030. I note that the Secretary of State hasn't shared that ambition. So imagine my surprise when I saw that in one of the government's first big moments, one of its first big acts, was to cut £1.3 billion of investment in supercomputer capability and related research funding. The Secretary of State talks about being a partner to the tech industry. Well, as one tech entrepreneur said to me, upon hearing the news of the cutting of extra-scale funding, he said, with friends like these, who needs enemies? And perhaps the Secretary of State or the Minister on his behalf could clarify if he fought against this decision, or clearly, did he endorse it? Was he able to stand up to the Chancellor, or was he so intimidated by her that he lost his voice? And we know the Prime Minister was unsettled by that portrait of Margaret Thatcher. Perhaps the Secretary of State was similarly unsettled by the Chancellor. Did he even bother to fight for Britain's AI and tech entrepreneurs? Or were the trappings of ministerial office so enticing that he forgot to defend the single most investment that would have ensured that we maintain our top position in the global AI race for decades to come? But let me offer the hand of friendship. Because if he is worried about standing up to the Chancellor, we on this side, I can assure him the hand of friendship exists. Because we on this side of the House will of course support him. He doesn't need to be afraid. We believe in economic growth on this side of the House, so we will help him. We will help him stand up to her, because after all, his successes will be the nation's successes, and that is our priority. But look, let me move on from exascale, because over the summer it became clear that the Labour government had capitulated to the junior doctors and given them inflation-busting pay rises without asking for any modernisation or efficiency improvements in return. Prior to this decision, did the Secretary of State meet with the Health Secretary? Did he insist on efficiency improvements or better use of technology, or was giving to Labour's trade union paymasters more important? He did say they were joined at the hip. Perhaps he may be able to show what he did to fight for the tech entrepreneurs of this country. I note that my honourable friend for Basildon and Billericay asked a question. He did not answer it. In addition, I note that the government has always also been silent on the NHS productivity review, which is backed by over £3.4 billion. He also did not answer the question when my honourable friend for Bosworth asked him. So can the Minister now confirm whether that funding is safe, or is it part of the Chancellor's black hole calculations? Our plan and our review was backed by the NHS and would have saved 13 million clinician hours. So what actually will be the Labour Party's plans? When the Transport Secretary capitulated to the transport unions, did he meet with her? Did he insist on better use of technology to improve our transport systems so that he could benefit consumers and protect taxpayers? Or did he just watch from the sidelines, and did he drink the Kool-Aid? And this may have passed him by, but so far in their first 2 months of office, the Labour Party has already handed out £14 billion to the trade union paymasters in no strings attached public sector pay deals. So it's all well and good grandstanding from the dispatch box. The facts are painting a different picture. So I just hope that he can stand up and find his voice and stand up for the tech sector before it's too late. And let me explain why it's so important. We've already heard the Secretary of State repeat the farcical claims of the Chancellor's black hole, all the while having inherited a tech economy that was the third most valuable in the world. A tech economy that was being recognised across the world for its ability to nurture more tech unicorns, i.e. more billion-pound valued companies than France, Germany and Sweden combined. A tech economy that was growing and creating annually millions of jobs and attracting billions of pounds worth of investment. And if the Secretary of State did make the decision to cut the £1.3 billion in extra-scale funding, and now talks down that same tech economy, and in doing so undermines those very tech entrepreneurs, which will help fund our public services for decades to come, and he makes it less attractive for investors to invest, then he can't sincerely stand at the dispatch box and argue that he believes in economic growth. Not if his first major economic act was one of economic mutilation. So I implore the Secretary of State to go back to the Chancellor and challenge this decision. Don't let the Chancellor's political games undermine him nor the tech industry, which has so much potential. It is in his power It is in his power, we do well to listen to this, it is in his power to ensure that we nurture and encourage tech innovation so the tech startups of today can become the tech giants of tomorrow. And I say this to the Secretary of State, do not squander this opportunity, or his legacy will be defined by what he didn't do rather than what he did do.
Minister, Ferrier-Clark.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm honoured to close the debate tonight, not only because I am speaking from this side of this ballot box for the first time, but also to hear so many truly wonderful maiden speeches. I want to particularly thank the Honourable Member for Dorking and Horley for speaking so movingly of Christopher. I want to thank Fiona and her daughter for joining us in the gallery today and pay tribute to the continued work Fiona is doing in Christopher's memory. Members from all parts of the House talked about safety, fairness and economic opportunities offered by technology in public services. Members have spoken with passion and conviction, especially on the government benches, about the need for change and to make true on our manifesto promises, and that is what this government will deliver. We all, I think, could agree on the importance of ensuring that the technologies of tomorrow deliver benefits for people in communities across the country. The question, of course, is how. Government must work with the incredible universities of which we are so proud, with the innovative startups that many honourable members have spoken about this evening. But government must also lead by example, harnessing the power of technology in our public services to improve people's lives. One of the first... Yes, of course.
Just to congratulate the front bench on their speeches tonight, would the Minister also agree with me that councils are very important in this? Not least, when I was the Cabinet Member for Health, we signed an agreement with the Open University to become the first dementia-friendly city, which involves not only medical technology and AI, and the first robot that can identify when somebody with dementia hasn't drunk enough and bring them a bottle of water, but also for the social innovation around using colours and wayfinding, whether it's in our shopping centres or in our play parks. So would the Minister agree with me that the partnership needs to expand to include business, startups, councils and the government, as well as our other public sector partners, in order to create the behaviour changes and the innovation and advance that we're all looking for?
I thank the Honourable Member for that contribution, and as someone who served in local authority, local government for a very long time, I recognise that innovation within our local authorities and the work we're doing within our department includes working with our local government partners very closely. So I thank her for that innovation. With the government must work, as I said, with the incredible universities of which we are so proud of, but with the innovative startups that many honourable members have spoken about this evening. But the government must also lead by example, as I said, harnessing the power of technology in our public services to improve people's lives. One of the first places I visited in my new brief was Hammersmith Hospital, Madam Deputy Speaker. There I met doctors who are using a new AI tool that can spot signs of ageing in the heart that are invisible to the human eye. The tool promises to calculate a person's heart age from an MRI scan, and for the first time pinpoint the genes that could make the heart age faster. In the process, it could transform the way we diagnose and treat heart failure. This is just one of the projects I saw in Hammersmith Hospital, focused on the safe, ethical and responsible development of AI. Projects that will be a crucial part of our mission to build an NHS fit for the future, a mission that this government is completely committed to. We want to seize every opportunity that technology offers to improve lives for our people, whether that means life-saving healthcare in our hospitals or world-class education in our classrooms. Because technologies like AI, Madam Deputy Speaker, if used rightly, can transform the productivity of Britain's broken services. With a 22 billion black hole in the public finances, just one second, and taxes at a 70-year high, saving taxpayers' money is more important than ever.
I thank the Minister. Would you agree in the importance of using AI to save taxpayers' money by doing some of the basics, like setting up an automated online booking system for hospital appointments, rather than the ongoing letters that we all fail to respond to?
Thank you. I thank the honourable member for that intervention. Absolutely right. That's why we have the Digital Centre for Government that will be working with departments across government to make sure that we have that we are putting in place those innovations and improvements. As I said, with the £22 billion black hole in the public services, finances and taxes at a 70-year high, saving taxpayer money is more important than ever. Led by Matt Clifford, the AI Opportunity Action Plan will identify the biggest opportunities to leverage AI to accelerate growth and deliver on the government's 5 missions. We will make sure this is backed by funded commitments, including those on compute, which will be taken in the round. AI will be at the heart of DCIT as the new digital centre for government. We have brought together data, digital and tech experts from across government under one roof to drive forward the digital transformation of our public services. A key part of, I want to make some progress, we haven't got very much time, sorry. A key part of that is ensuring that the centre has the very best leaders, all of them appointed in line with civil service recruitment. As the Honourable Member for Oxford West and Abingdon highlighted, we need to ensure that civil service has the digital and data skills needed both for today and for tomorrow's challenges. We're committed to reducing the government's reliance on contingent labour, reducing costs and growing capabilities for the long term. We've set standards for the digital and data skills all senior civil servants need to have and deliver the Digital Excellence Programme, which has upskilled more than 1,300 SCS against the criteria. We've also launched a new at-scale digital apprenticeship programme, Tech Track, and rolled out training on AI for all civil servants to build their confidence. But safety will be at the heart of that. Many honourable members tonight have rightly expressed their concern at risk of discrimination and bias in AI systems. That is why data and AI practitioners across government use tools such as the Algorithmic Transparency Recording Standard, developed by my officials to support a safe, fair and transparent use of algorithms in the public sector. My honourable friend, the member for Stoke-on-Trent, has highlighted the importance of safe development of AI. Safety will be also embedded in our new AI bill, which I can assure the honourable member for Meriden will introduce binding regulations on the handful of companies who are developing the most powerful AI systems of tomorrow. And it will be the foundational principle behind the Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill, which will shore up Britain's cyber defences and protect our public services in the decades to come. The digital revolution must be safe. I'm afraid we've run out of time. I'm so sorry. And its benefits must also be accessible to everyone, including the vulnerable communities the Honourable Member for Glasgow West talked so movingly about in her speech. That is why we are committed to tackling the connectivity issues the Honourable Member, including the Member for Newcastle upon Tyne, Central and West, North East Hampshire and South Devon have spoken about this evening. That includes the 5G Innovation Regions Programme, which has invested over 36 million in 10 regions across the UK. My honourable friend, the member for Croydon East, has spoken about the importance of closing the digital divide. We have spent the summer talking and listening to digital inclusion experts, local authorities, and many more who are working at the front line of digital inclusion. But this is just the start of the conversation. We want to tackle the important issues together, including through inclusive digital platforms like gov.uk on one line, one login, which offers a straightforward and secure way to access a range of government digital services. Soon, the government programme will expand route to proving identity to include those without photo documentation, benefiting pensioners, students and minors who are too often excluded.
Order.